Yo, Pan. Why do we still have the chat on from yesterday? Oh, wait, is this one? Wait, what now? Wait, is this... What? I don't even know what's happening. All right, well, we'll see if it comes back. I know I am early because that ML Bove thing is happening and I didn't realize it, and I actually have an appointment in the real world today. So I kind of wanted to jam as much as I could into the second half. Not feeling terribly chatty this session, so I'm just going to kind of let it go. Let's see here. Yeah, just one of those days. Everybody has one of those days. There it is. All right. So let me... okay. Get rid of that. Move this over there. Hi, Lee. I don't really give a shit as long as everybody else is happy. Chuck Grassley. Hi, Badger. So this is regarding, let me just get the article here. This is a good article, a Substack actually, that Gal shared in advance of this hearing, which I didn't pick up on what she was putting down. I wonder if this is going to work. I'm just going to see. This is the article that Gal was sharing. Did it work? Oh, it fucking did. Hell yeah. Anyway, so there's the, this is good background. I don't think we have a chance to read it right this second, but because I want to watch some of this and catch up with it. God damn it. Okay, so we're going to go past Shithead's opening remarks. We'll go to this guy. So this is ML Bove, and he is a Senate confirmation hearing to be a federal judge. ML Bove is nominated to be a federal judge. So here we go. Just listen to a good interview on the Majority Report with Chase Strangio regarding the Scarmetti case. Oh, interesting. Oh, thanks. I'll find, if you drop that in, well, I can find it, but if you drop it, Lucy, in Discord, I can share it here or something like that. So, okay, let's hear what this guy. I want to go ahead to the other guys. There we go. Dick Durbin. All right, here we go.
Resigned, including the U.S. Attorney herself. A staunch conservative who clerked for Justice Scalia and was appointed by President Trump. She resigned over Mr. Bove's suggested deal. The lead prosecutor in the Adams case also resigned. Hagan Scotton, who earned 2 Bronze Stars in Iraq, clerked for Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Kavanaugh, wrote to Mr. Bove, and I quote, "I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool, enough of a coward to file your motion, but it was never going to be me." And according to a whistleblower complaint the committee received yesterday, Mr. Bove has suggested that the Justice Department might need to say F you to federal courts and ignore federal court orders with which this administration disagrees. Ladies and gentlemen, this gets to the heart of our democracy. I did, but we have more.
This is already underway, and
as Senator Kennedy of Louisiana has rightly reminded previous nominees, and I quote, "Don't ever, ever take the position that you're not going to follow an order of the federal court, ever," end of quote. These serious allegations against Mr. Bove came not from the ACLU, but from a career Justice Department lawyer who was promoted by the Trump administration and is best known for defending the first Trump administration's immigration policies in court. He has now put his reputation on the line to inform this committee on the judiciary of what Mr. Bove's wrongdoing was. and predictably he's being attacked by the president's MAGA lapdogs. In addition to Mr. Bovey's unethical conduct, there are serious questions about his temperament. According to public reporting, Mr. Bovey was the subject of an internal investigation over his, quote, abusive, quote, bellicose management style while serving as a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. Just what we need in a federal judge with a lifetime appointment. His fellow prosecutors noted that Mr. Bovey has a quick temper and he belittled his co-workers. In one instance, his poor management contributed to a botched case in which an individual convicted of serious charges related to evading foreign sanction was allowed to go free. My Republican colleagues may brush these examples aside. They may say Democrats have an axe to grind against Mr. Bovey because of the role he's playing in the president's agenda. But the fact remains that complaints about Mr. Bovey's temperament and candor long predate his association with President Trump. I'd also like to address the process by which Mr. Bovey was selected for this New Jersey seat. The White House engaged with Senator Booker and Senator Kim on this vacancy for only 3 months before announcing Mr. Bovey's nomination. And notably, the White House did not indicate it was considering Mr. Bovey until 2 months into that process. Compare that to Biden White House's approach with Republican members of the committee. The Biden White House discussed 2 Sixth Circuit vacancies and a Fourth Circuit vacancy with home state senators for 7 months, 9 months, and 6 months, respectively, before making a selection. The White House also initially indicated that Senator Booker would be able to interview candidates other than Mr. Bovey before then reversing course. Notably, Mr. Bovey hardly has ties to New Jersey for this New Jersey-based seat. Don't take my word for it. His formal nomination before this committee identifies him as, quote, Emil J. Bovey III of Pennsylvania. He's not even admitted to practice before the court to which he's been nominated. As a former chairman of this committee has said, with respect to judicial nominees, elections have consequences, so I expect to see conservative judicial nominees coming from this administration. But in recent weeks, President Trump has criticized Leonard Leo and the Federalist Society for, quote, bad advice they gave him in recommending legal conservatives during his first term. He's upset that his own judicial nominees have had the audacity to rule against the administration's illegal actions. With Mr. Bovey, we see a sign of what is to come. President Trump cares little about statutory interpretation and the original meaning of the Constitution. He is looking for loyalty. He is looking for fierce retribution. He is looking for someone who will instill fear in his opponents. It seems he has found such a nominee in Mr. Bovey. I yield.
Before I go to the senators from Florida, I have to address the allegation that you just made about Mr. Bovey suggesting that the department should violate court orders. As initial matter, this statement would be inconsistent with what President Trump said back in February 11th.
What?
Quote, I always abide by the courts, always abide by them, and will appeal. End of quote. This initial unconfirmed whistleblower, Senator Moody.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. Let me first by saying welcome to my new colleague, Senator Rick Scott, who is in front of the Judiciary Committee.
The White House itself proposed. Senator Blackburn and Tillis raised similar concerns last Congress, but this nominee, as I said, sets new precedent. Before their nomination, all Judiciary Committee Democrats, including myself, had submitted a professional misconduct complaint against Mr. Bovey with the New York State Bar. There is no scenario under which the White House counsel could believe that this nomination would be acceptable. Moreover, Mr. Bovey's record makes clear that he has no business serving a lifetime on the federal bench. As was discussed by Mr. Durbin, Mr. Bovey has a complete disregard for the rule of law. Yesterday, a DOJ whistleblower, something our chairman values a lot, is whistleblowing, revealed that Mr. Bovey said in a court, and that any court that tried to stop the president from deporting people would be told expletive U. Mr. Bove then instructed the DHS to ignore any court order not to deport anyone. Again, he said with an expletive, F court orders. I don't even understand how we are seriously considering someone for a lifetime appointment on the federal bench who has such disregard for court orders. But again, to characterize this as Democrats having problems with this nominee is a wrong characterization. We are seeing more and more respected conservative leaders coming out against this. This is a bipartisan coming out against this nominee. Ed Whalen from the National Review said he has serious doubts that Bove has the character and integrity to be worthy of confirmation as a judge. The Society of the Rule of Law, Greg Nunzian's Society for the Rule of Law, a former GOP chief nominations counsel, came out and said that Mr. Bove's record at the Justice Department, including manipulating prosecutions for political or policy ends, is deeply incompatible with a lifetime appointment to federal judicial services. The Wall Street Journal's editorial board said, quote, by every account, Mr. Bove was an unethical prosecutor who didn't play by the rules. He violated his constitutional obligations to provide a defendant with exculpatory evidence. His Brady obligation, it was the biggest scandal of prosecutorial misconduct at the SDNY. He abused his staff and he abused power. The Wall Street editorial board says, quote, Mr. Bove's reputation lately is as a smath-mouth partisan who wields the law as a weapon. This is a conservative editorial board. Our job as a committee is not to simply rubber stamp nominees because the president nominated them. We should understand that the respect for our legal system, the respect for the rule of law is vital. We are hearing time and time again from people across the political spectrum and nonpartisan people that this nomination is violative of the shared values we have for who should be on the bench, what their temperament should be, what their respect for the rule of law should be. Mr. Bove should not be before us today in an oversight hearing on the unlawful acts of the Justice Department. He should be before us, in an oversight hearing on the unlawful acts of the Department of Justice. He should be before us to account for what we have seen going on in a very unusual way. He should not be before us for a lifetime appointment to the federal bench. I appeal to the chairman of this committee for us to have before us this whistleblower who is as Senator Durbin said, he should come before us and add testimony for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Bove, would you please come and stand before you sit so I can swear? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please be seated, and you can give your statement, and you're welcome to introduce family and friends, whatever you want to do now.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. I appreciate the kind words in your introduction, and I'm grateful to you, Ranking Member Durbin, and the rest of this committee for holding this hearing today. It really is a privilege to be here, and I understand that we have some serious work to do. I also appreciate the opportunity to say some words before we get started. First, I want to start by thanking President Trump for the honor of this nomination. I'm also grateful for the opportunity to serve in this Justice Department under his administration and under the leadership of Attorney General Bondi, who's been a wonderful friend and mentor to me during that process. I also want to say thank you to some family and friends who have supported me throughout my life, especially over the last several years. That's a long list, but there are a couple people that I'd like to call out specifically. I'm going to start with my dad, who I love very much and is watching me from home right now in Seneca Falls, New York. I also want to thank my wife, who's here today. She's been a rock of support in my life for almost 2 decades at this point. I want to thank my brother, who's serving in the Navy's submarine service right now. I expect he would be here today, but he's deployed. His service and the sacrifices of his family in connection with that service really are an inspiration to the work that I do. Lastly, I want to say thank you to Todd Blanche and his wife, who are also here today. Suffice it to say, we've been through a lot, and I'm very grateful for the way that they've welcomed me into their family. Now I'd like to say a little bit about me. I am someone who tries to stand up for what I believe is right. I'm not afraid to make difficult decisions. I understand that some of those decisions have generated controversy. I respect this process, and I'm here today to address some of your questions about those decisions. But I want to be clear about one thing up front. There is a wildly inaccurate caricature of me in the mainstream media. I am not anybody's henchman. I'm not an enforcer. I'm a lawyer from a small town who never expected to be in an arena like this. Not until Todd called me and gave me an opportunity to participate in some of the most historic and significant legal battles of our lifetime. I'm proud of what Todd and I accomplished as part of President Trump's defense team. But I think that because some of that happened so recently, it might be easy to overlook the fact that I've spent most of my life in public service. I have taken an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States more than once, and I have honored that oath. These experiences collectively, as a paralegal, a law clerk, a prosecutor, and a defense lawyer, have left me with deep respect for the rule of law. That is a system that is in place to protect everyone, and the federal courts play a critical role in that process. Those are the first principles that would guide me every single day if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed. Thank you again for this opportunity to give some remarks at the start, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. We'll now start our questioning, 5-minute rounds. Mr. Bovee, on the eve of your hearing, we witnessed a coordinated political attack in the media claiming that you
refutes the claim you just made.
And with Mayor Adams and
Thank you.
Senator Durbin.
Mr. Bovee, you were deeply involved with the Justice Department's decision to drop federal corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. You were personally involved in this. Multiple federal prosecutors resigned rather than to dismiss the indictment against Mayor Adams. These individuals made it clear that they believe you had engaged in a quid pro quo with Mayor Adams in order to secure his cooperation with President Trump's immigration priorities. Following these resignations, you reportedly held a video call with dozens of attorneys in the Justice Department's Public Integrity section. Do you remember that call?
I do.
Mr. Bovee, why did you move forward with this case over the objection of the U.S. Attorney's Office, including the lead prosecutor?
I made a decision, and the department made a decision, to proceed with that motion because it was a determination of the senior leadership of the department that policy reasons made it appropriate to dismiss the charges.
What are
in order
policy
to get
reasons?
Mayor Adams to cooperate with President
mean?
Trump's immigration policy, you were prepared to drop the charges against him?
You just admitted
That's
it.
completely false, and I just explained
but
why.
that's just what you
Well,
just said.
it is not completely false. That's exactly what happened.
You
But the
just said
judge
it.
foiled your plans with prejudice dismissal of the case. You can no longer have the mayor on a leash making sure that he follows the president's immigration policies.
Ranking Member Durbin, there's objective evidence in the record in that case that completely refutes the claim you just made.
And there's subjective
And what is it?
evidence to the
What
contrary.
is that?
On your call
what
with
is that?
individuals in the Public
And
Integrity
what is it?
section, did you state, suggest, or imply
What is it?
that the section's career attorneys could be fired if none of them agreed to sign the brief dismissing Mayor Adams' indictment?
No.
Do you know the two individuals who signed the brief?
I do.
This guy cannot win
Edward
this.
Sullivan, one of
Unfortunately,
them?
he will just by lying. So it really
Yes.
doesn't matter what we're doing here.
Antoinette
but
Bacon,
whatever.
another?
That's correct.
Did you state, suggest, or imply that any individual who agreed to sign the brief would be rewarded?
I'm sorry, I don't follow the question.
Well, you needed somebody to
You
sign
don't
that brief,
understand
and those
English?
two stepped forward. Was there any suggestion they be treated any differently because of it?
No.
Really?
Which attorney, I've already asked this question. Have either of these attorneys been promoted since this occurrence?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Oh, really?
Mr. Bovee, in January 2022, you co-authored an article for
Wait,
Law
let's
360 in
Durbin
which you
follow
described
through.
domestic terrorism
Oh,
as,
my God.
quote, a national security issue. You then cited charges brought against attendees of the August 2017 Unite the Right white supremacist rally in Charlottesville and against members of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers relating to the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. You described these prosecutions in the article as, quote, recent examples that illustrate the asymmetry between international terrorism statutes and the patchwork of narrower laws that can be used to address domestic terrorism. Mr. Bovee, do you stand by your characterization of the 2017 Unite the Right rally and January 6th as domestic terrorism?
I stand by what I said in the article.
You directed Ed Martin, the failed nominee to serve as U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, to fire dozens of line prosecutors who had worked on the January 6th case. You also sought the names of thousands of FBI employees who had worked on investigations into January 6 rioters, accused these career public servants of, quote, weaponization, close quote, of the FBI. Mr. Bovee, did you order the removal of anyone who investigated or prosecuted rioters who assaulted law enforcement officers on January 6th?
So, Ranking Member Durbin, with respect to the prosecutors that you just referenced, there was a decision that was made in response to moves by the prior administration to embed temporary
What does that
assistant
mean?
United States attorneys who were brought to the district for purposes of the January 6 cases
What?
into that office as permanent employees.
Because there was
in
a
many
lot of-
instances after the
Okay.
2024 election.
And then what are you gonna
When
do?
I found out about that, I found it to be unacceptable from the perspective of the management of that office and the need for the permanent U.S. attorney
what a
put forth
coinkydink.
by the president and by Attorney General
What a
Bondi to
coinkydink.
manage the office and to staff it. The attorneys that were terminated were on probationary status.
just a coincidence.
I was advised, I did not make this decision alone.
Oh.
that
Mr. Bovee,
Who else made it with you?
this doesn't
Boy, you were
square with
talking
your
a
own
lot.
words. I have in my hand here the memorandum that you prepared on January 31st, 2025 to U.S. attorneys and others, in which you made it clear this was about more than provisional employees being dismissed.
Exactly.
Let me read what you wrote. In an executive order issued on January 20th, 2025, President Trump appropriately characterized that work as having involved a grave national injustice that's been perpetrated upon the American people over the last 4 years. This is not about provisional employees. It's about January 6 prosecutions. You call them a domestic terrorism event in this article that you have written. Most people, those of us who lived through this ordeal, understand it was such a domestic terrorist event. And now you're trying to have it both ways. You're saying you dismissed the people who prosecuted those who beat up on our law enforcement officers, and it had nothing to do with January 6th. Your words defy that.
That's not correct, Ranking Member Durbin.
I
most
didn't write that.
respectfully, because both things can be true. I did and continue to condemn unlawful
But
behavior.
you let 'em all go?
Particularly violence against law
I
enforcement.
don't understand.
At the same time,
No, you don't.
I condemn heavy-handed and unnecessary tactics by prosecutors.
Oh, how
and
about all the
agents.
child
Both of those
sexual
things,
abuse
I
people
submit,
that came out of the
are
J6
characteristic
pardons?
of these events that
These
we're talking
people
about.
paid for your strategy with their careers. They lost their jobs
Yeah.
in the Department of Justice and in the FBI
They did
because
good
you
work.
identified them as being involved in January 6th prosecution. You cannot call on
political.
one hand that prosecution as a grave injustice, as you did in your own memo here, and then on the other hand, tell me how seriously you feel about people assaulting police officers.
I have to disagree again, respectfully, most respectfully. No FBI agents, to my knowledge, were terminated in connection with the list that's referenced in that memo. What I requested was some information about who had participated so that I could begin, and the department could begin, a process of reviewing the events to identify whether there were the types of heavy-handed tactics that I just referenced. That process.
I have one last question here. Do you support President Trump's full and unconditional pardon of January 6 rioters who violently assaulted law enforcement officers?
It's not for me to question President Trump's exercise of the pardon power any more than it would be for me to question President Biden's commutation of death sentences or his pardons of drug traffickers.
Before I go to Senator Lee, I'd like to address the quid pro quo allegation head on by entering into the record the official court transcript from Mayor Adams' case. This isn't
congressional oversight question in a 12b6 motion in a civil case or in a motion to dismiss in a, well, I'll leave it to the civil cases.
If it's summary judgment, you were going down the summary judgment.
Right, right. It would seem prudent to me to allow the case to go to a jury, which is really just, to me, a core part of our history and tradition that allows people in our local communities
just following
to make
the Constitution.
decisions and participate in the process.
No, that's a fair point, and the fact that a judge in that circumstance is in doubt or experiences pause when deciding whether there's a genuine issue of material fact suggests that there is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Whitehouse.
Mr. Chairman, before my time begins, may I take a moment to make a
thanks, Gal. I didn't really pick up on what you were trying to put down
you
earlier,
indicated,
so I wanted
Mr.
to come on
Chairman,
early and try and get in some of
opening
this
remarks that
hearing.
The committee
Thanks for doing
should be constrained by the deliberative process privilege.
Yes.
And by the attorney-client privilege in our examination of this witness. It's my understanding that Congress has never accepted the constitutional validity of either such privilege as an inhibition of our constitutional congressional oversight responsibilities. And so I don't intend to follow that direction because I don't think it's correct. And I think it abdicates really important oversight authorities that we have. Moreover, particularly when we are in a nominations process and somebody has affirmatively put themselves forward, to then have them seek the shelter of deliberative process and attorney-client privilege puts us in an even worse position. So I think if we were ever going to do this, nominations are the low ebb of any justification for that. It gets even worse when the nominee faces questions about official misconduct as a lawyer. Among other reasons, privileges tend to fall when misconduct is alleged. And so for all of those reasons, I, just as one senator, reject the proposition that this committee must yield in its questioning and in its fact-finding in an oversight or nominations matter to those executive privileges. I don't think Congress has ever taken the position that they supervene our constitutional oversight authority, and I think it was a unfortunate occasion that happened this morning.
If Senator Whitehouse is asking this farmer to listen to more lawyers, I'll be glad to consult.
I'd be delighted to follow up on this because I think it's a really bad position for this committee to put itself in with respect to nominees or other oversight matters, particularly when we oversee the Department of Justice that is stuffed with lawyers who can easily cook up an attorney-client privilege defense or a deliberative process defense, and then we are now in a no-fly zone with respect to our oversight responsibilities. Nobody takes oversight responsibilities more seriously than you, Chairman, so I hope we can come to a better accommodation on this than your opening statement suggests.
Right now, I can't say more than I have.
That's fine. That's fine. And I'd also like to ask unanimous consent to put into the record, to the extent that has not been done so far, the whistleblower report that has been discussed, the resignation letters of the career officers in the Adams prosecution, the resignation statement by Denise Chung in the GGRF matter, the article that I have here from Politico related to the nominee's management character, and the Wall Street Journal editorial describing him as a smash-mouth partisan who wields the law as a weapon.
Without objection.
Okay. With that, thank you. I guess my clock got started already. Mr. Bovee, what was your role in Ed Martin's plan to create a unpredicated criminal investigation as a basis for trying to seize greenhouse gas reduction funds? Were you engaged with him in that plan?
I'm not aware of such a plan, Senator, but I did participate in the matter that you're referring to.
Plan matter, okay. Did you know that before he took office, he had expressed private opinions about the, I'll call it GGRF for time purposes, before he came in?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Okay. Did he consult with you regarding his efforts to get a document together to present to a magistrate judge to provide a basis for freezing and seizing the GGRF funds?
Senator, like many nominees before me who come to testify before this committee and are at the same time simultaneously serving in the department, this includes Justice Kagan, Justice Kavanaugh, Judge Katsas, all at various times, but were serving or served previously. I'm not going to be able to comment on the specifics of matters like that.
I'm not asking you at this point. I'm asking you, were you consulted regarding that?
And my answer is limited to I participated in the matter. And if there's public information about the matter that you'd like me to try and address, I'm happy to do my best to do that.
The chief of the criminal division was removed after she refused to sign off on the proposal, on the proposed pleading. Were you involved in her removal?
I've read public reports about that, and to my recollection of those reports, I believe she resigned.
Did you approve the U.S. attorney demanding her resignation and pressing her out of her office?
I'm not able to go beyond the fact that I participated in the matter that you're referring to, Senator.
Wow.
Were you aware that U.S. Attorney Martin went into court alone without any other career attorney or any other attorney in the office willing to sign off on the pleading in which he sought the freeze or seizure?
I'm not sure if that's true or not, Senator.
We can look at the pleading. Nobody else signed. He ran out the criminal chief for refusing to sign. Presumably, he went shopping for somebody else who would sign. Nobody did, so he went in alone. Will you agree that it is very unusual for a politically appointed United States attorney to file a pleading without the support of a single career prosecutor in the office?
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay, well, were you aware that when he did go in alone without the support of a career prosecutor in the office, he was shot down by the magistrate judge in pursuing the order?
Senator, I refer you to my previous answer. I'm not able to go beyond the fact that I participated in the matter.
Did you, would you agree that ordinarily the Department of Justice does its very best to make sure that its pleadings are sufficiently well prepared that they're not shot down by magistrate judges?
Yes, of course.
After it was shot down by the judge, did you participate in shopping the matter to other offices so that the effort to seize or freeze the GGRF funds could be pursued despite the U.S. Attorney's failure?
Senator, I'd refer you to my previous answer. I'm able to confirm I participated in this matter. Based on public reporting, I am aware that there are certainly other districts with grantees who receive funds from these programs where under the law that applies to venue, it would be appropriate for similar investigations to take place.
Did you contact them?
I refer you to my prior answer, Senator.
Did you let them know that the effort by Interim U.S. Attorney Martin had been shot down?
I apologize, Senator. I'm not trying to be difficult, but I must refer you to my prior answer.
Senator Kennedy?
Just, if I may,
yes.
Chairman.
Proceed.
This is not further questioning. I know my time is expired. Do you see my point now? We have an individual here who is here seeking confirmation to one of the highest judicial offices in the land. I'm asking quite legitimate questions about potential misconduct in office. Some of it has nothing to do with the substance of pleadings, but has to do with administrative matters like seeking the removal of a criminal career chief prosecutor. Some of it has to do with administrative matters like case assignment. And the fact that I can't get anything resembling a straight answer in the circumstances that we're in right now, I think is signals a really bad moment for this committee, and I hope we can reconsider.
I would be glad to discuss that with you. Senator
Can we get
Kennedy.
him back then once the rules are clear?
Senator Kennedy.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bove, I'm looking at your resume. It's Bove, right?
Bovee, Senator, like with a
Bove,
long
I
E.
apologize, sir.
No worries. Thank you.
I want you to look me in the eye and swear to your higher being when you answer this question. Did you make a deal, a political deal, to dismiss the charges against Mayor Adams?
Absolutely not.
Did anybody else that you witnessed make a political deal to dismiss the charges?
Absolutely not.
You swear to your higher being?
I swear to my higher being and on every bone in my body.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's a lot of bones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bove, I was just listening to my colleague, Senator Kennedy's questions, and one of your answers was that you felt that these charges should be dropped against the mayor because he was campaigning. It would
That's
interfere with
supposed to
his
read
campaigning.
White
It
House
would
like the name
interfere
White
with
House. It's
his
Sheldon
ability to do your
Whitehouse's
job. So then is it your
memo
position that
about Emil?
that's the reason
So,
that you shouldn't be able
sorry,
to ever
they should be
prosecute
together.
any elected officials regardless of party because it might interfere with their campaigning if they commit murder, if they are committing a major white-collar crime, if they are taking bribes, that the reason is that they're campaigning? Because they're always campaigning, Mr. Bove. So I was just stunned by that answer.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be stunning, Senator. I think it's a fact and circumstances determination. It's case specific. In that particular case, based on the charges and the manner in which the case was pursued, I did think that there was, and the department thought, for the reasons we laid out in our brief, that the prosecution placed an inordinate burden on the mayor's ability to protect the city and to campaign in an ongoing election cycle.
I just think this would be a reason. It's like there would be two classes of justice, one for people who are in office and one for everyone else, if that's the argument you use. And isn't it true on February 10th that you ordered the bribery case against the mayor be dismissed? And I quote your letter to then acting U.S. Attorney Sassoon, without assessing the strength of the evidence or the legal theories on which the case is based. That's what you said, correct?
The determination was based on the policy considerations that I've outlined and did not rely on
By your own written admission, though, you failed to assess the merits of the case and ordered that the bribery charges dismissed entirely for these reasons, so he could campaign.
That's not true, Senator. That's inaccurate. I did look at the evidence, and that's why I spent extensive time reviewing the case file, meeting with the prosecutors alone, meeting with them with the defense counsel. in the department's decision-making, we chose to proceed based on the policy determinations that I've outlined and not the strength of the evidence or concerns about the legal theory.
In your letter to then acting U.S. Attorney Sassoon, you ordered her to drop the case because you were, quote, concerned about the impact of the prosecution on Mayor Adams' ability to support, end quote, the president's immigration agenda. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. When you appeared in court to file your motion to dismiss, the court stated that your efforts to dismiss the case were unsupported by any objective evidence and, quote, fundamentally incompatible with the basic promise of equal justice under law. Is that what the court said?
I don't recall the court saying that at the hearing that I attended. To the extent the court wrote something like that in the opinion, that was an opinion that granted the motion. And I think the context is really important, Senator. The context is that Rule 48 doesn't require the department to provide any evidence. It requires a non-conclusory explanation by the prosecutors of the reason for dismissing a case.
Okay, well, let's go over what Hagen Skoten, who was the,
but
he
none
was
of the
the lead
prosecutors
prosecutor on
did.
the case. Is that right?
I think that's right, yes.
Decorated Iraqi war veteran, clerked for then Judge Kavanaugh on the D.C. Circuit, and then Justice Roberts. In his letter, he says that Damian Williams' role in the case somehow tainted a valid indictment supported by ample evidence and pursued under 4 different U.S. attorneys. This was your reasoning because you said you felt that the former U.S. attorney somehow tainted this case. But yet, as Hagen Skoten pointed out, it was pursued under 4 different U.S. attorneys. He said that this reasoning is so weak as to be transparently pretextual. Why do you think he said that?
So I'd like to begin by just confirming that I respect Hagen's military service and his public service. And the fact that we disagree on this particular issue is not meant to disparage him in any way. However, the department filed a brief explaining and elaborating on the basis for our motion. In that brief, we outlined private communications and comments on documents by the prosecutors, including Mr. Skoten. One of those communications, private communications, Mr. Skoten said that he found it plausible that Damian Williams proceeded based on political motivations. So what he said publicly is not consistent with what the trial team was thinking privately, contemporaneous with these events.
Okay, I will again go back to the fact that I don't think that the reason that someone is running for office or is has some policy agreement or disagreements with the administration should be a reason to bring or dismiss charges. And he also added, no system of ordered liberty can allow the government to use the carrot of dismissing charges or the stick of threatening to bring them again to induce an elected official to support its policy objective. He then ended, as I'm sure you realize, he ended with, I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion, but it was never going to be me. So my concern with what happened here, and then also with the decision to fire January 6 prosecutors, is basically the same. I am a former prosecutor myself. I ran the biggest prosecutor office in our state, and every single day you're confronted with issues of ethics, and maybe you know someone you're prosecuting, maybe someone knows someone you're prosecuting, maybe they agree with you, maybe you don't, and you have to make a decision based on the law and the facts and not on whether or not they agree with your administration. And when I look, we heard from, yes, Chairman Grassley, 2 more sentences, when we heard from former prosecutors who were dismissed because they'd simply done their job in looking at what happened on January 6th. I just think it's part of the same threat. It's politics over the law, and it should be law over politics.
Senator Moody.
It's a good thing I wasn't holding that gavel.
Because why?
Good to be with you. Thank you for being here. Thank you to your family for being here, colleagues from the office, the Department of Justice.
By that standard, applying the rule of.
And I might point out, voiced on the point that
Ashley,
Senator
go fuck
Whitehouse
yourself.
raised, this so-called deliberative process privilege. First, this committee and Congress have never accepted that kind of assertion as a basis to evade questioning in this kind of confirmation hearing. But I'd like to point out also that this witness has no right to invoke that privilege. It's a privilege for the government of the United States to invoke. Now, I notice that the Deputy Attorney General is sitting right behind the witness. I didn't hear the Deputy Attorney General invoke this privilege on behalf of the government of the United States. And I might point out also that the witness is invoking it selectively. When he wants to answer the question, no privilege. When he wants to avoid answering the question, he says he's not at liberty to answer it. We've never accepted that kind of tactic on the part of a witness. Yes, nominees have sometimes said they can't comment on a case or an issue because it may come before them as a judge. But this kind of selective invoking of a privilege smacks of evasion and defiance, and I think reflects on us as a committee if we accept it in this context, Mr. Chairman. So I hope that the witness may be instructed to answer these questions, or we can have a resolution somehow on the legitimacy of this kind of privilege and ask the witness to come back. Let me begin my questioning.
Mr. Chairman, I think the clock was started on Senator Blumenthal while he made his point of order. It might be a courtesy to allow it to be. Thank you. There it is.
I hadn't noticed that, Mr. Chairman, but I thank Senator Whitehouse for pointing it out. Thank you.
Let me say in the future,
Mr. Bove,
White House made very clear the issues you're bringing up, and I said I'm willing to discuss them. But
thank you.
We can't take the time of this.
Just reset the fucking clock, you crow.
To hear a repeat of everything from every member that would disagree with
Ashley
what I said
Moody
in my
covered up
opening
Greenberg
statement.
and Gates sex trafficking and money laundering crimes. So that tells
point,
you
Mr.
everything
Chairman.
you need to know
I'll begin
about
my
Ashley
question.
Moody.
Mr. Bove, you
Thank
responded
you, Gal,
to Senator
for bringing
Kennedy's
those
questions
people
about
to our
who
attention,
was consulted
too.
about
You did a
the
great service to this
dismissal
country.
charges against Mr. Adams. Did you ever talk to Stephen Miller before you filed the memorandum on February 10th ordering the dismissal of the Adams charges?
Senator, I responded to Senator Kennedy's questions based on a publicly filed document that described the Attorney General as a...
Did you talk to Stephen Miller?
I'm not going to describe the participants in conversations.
So you won't answer that question?
No, I will not, Senator.
Why?
Because it is not appropriate for me to discuss...
It is appropriate for you to tell us whom you consulted before taking action on behalf of the United States of America. You have no basis to avoid that question, Mr. Bove.
Respectfully, Senator, I'm answering that question in a manner similar to several nominees before me, including Judge Katzen.
Did you talk to anyone in the White House, including the President, about dismissal of the Adams charges before the February 10th memorandum?
I respectfully refer you back to my answer, Senator.
I am absolutely flabbergasted that you would come before this committee and refuse to tell us basic facts about a case that is at the core of the challenges to the appearance of impropriety that should disqualify you. You have the opportunity to clear the air, to come clean with the American people as well as this committee, and you are evading and avoiding these questions.
Senator, if you have a question about the position that I took in public with respect to the Mayor Adams case, I'm happy to address it, and I've addressed several today.
Well, I have asked you a question that bears on the appearance of impropriety. Let me go on. Mr. Bove, in court, you represented, first, that there was no quid pro quo, but you said that the decision, even if there were a quid pro quo, was unreviewable by the court. Do you stand by that?
I don't think that's what I said, Senator, because it's not consistent with the rule, which explicitly provides.
Well, you said it not only once, but you said it a number of times. And the judge observed, Judge Ho said, that your position was, quote, fundamentally incompatible with the basic promise of equal justice under law. That's what he said about your position, that the decision to dismiss these charges was unreviewable. Do you stand by that assertion?
I never made that assertion, and the judge granted the motion, Senator.
He granted the motion, but he disagreed with your premise that it was unreviewable. Let me ask you, are decisions to dismiss cases, as with that one, unreviewable?
The text of Rule 48 requires, in the instances presented by the Adams case, that dismissal only be provided for with leave of the court. That's as near a quote as I can give you. And the entire brief that I submitted acknowledged that point because we were seeking the leave.
Mr. Bove, I am concerned about the quid pro quo that the judge concluded had been done. In fact, he said everything here smacks of a bargain. Everything here smacks of a bargain. But the quid pro quo that really concerns me is the one that brings you here today. You were virtually the only attorney in the Department of Justice willing to go to court and make a claim that career prosecutors said violated their basic standard of ethics. And the quid pro quo was a nomination to the Court of Appeals. That's the appearance that the American people can take away from your sitting before us with that nomination. And I think it does grave damage to respect for the rule of law, notwithstanding your assertions about your adherence to it, for you to be here as a result of that stand by you. Let me ask you about a separate issue, the firing of prosecutors and investigators who were involved in the January 6th prosecutions. You were involved in purging prosecutors who, in good faith and an exercise of their prosecutorial judgment, they went to court, they brought charges, you purged them. Isn't that correct?
I don't agree with the use of the word purged, Senator.
Well, you fired them.
I authorized the termination of probationary employees at that U.S. Attorney's Office, yes.
Because they prosecuted the January 6th rioters?
No, because I was concerned about efforts in the prior administration to embed those prosecutors as permanent employees at the U.S. Attorney's Office.
And you also fired the FBI investigators involved in the January 6th prosecution, correct?
No, that's not accurate.
You worked with Director Patel in firing them, correct?
No, that's not accurate.
Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to pivot away from the Democrats' fake outrage on lawfare and talk about real lawfare. How has your representation of President Trump in the
judgment as defense lawyers, we argue to the
so congratulations.
Senator Ronald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask every nominee who comes before any of the committees on which I sit the following two initial questions that go to fitness to serve by the nominee. I'll ask you, Mr. Bove. Since you became a legal adult, have you made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No.
In the February 23rd, 2025 report in Politico, the title was, quote, before he became Trump's bulldog, Emile Bove was nearly demoted for bellicose management style, end quote. According to this article, which was put into the record, when you served as a unit chief at the Southern District of New York, and I'm again quoting this article, Mr. Bove quickly garnered a reputation as a manager who was sharply critical of the people who worked for him and unable to control his anger. His conduct was abusive, according to one former member of the unit. Are you familiar with this article?
I am.
Okay. So going on, according to this article, in 2020 or early 2021, the Executive Committee of the U.S. Attorney's Office opened a formal inquiry into Bovie's management style. They interviewed prosecutors who worked for him about his behavior, and they decided that he should be removed from his role as a supervisor, end quote. Of course, you are aware of this inquiry and their recommendation.
As
Yes?
well as the fact
No?
that I was not removed.
Yes?
I was not removed, Senator.
Can you speak into the mic so we can all hear your answers, please?
I apologize. I was not removed, Senator.
I know you were not removed because the article goes on to say that when this committee decided to demote you and remove you, you pleaded with them to allow you to remain in your job, and you pledged that you would commit to improving your behavior. Did you do that? Did you request they not remove you? Did you plead that you not be removed and that you would change your behavior?
That characterization is not accurate, Senator.
So you did not change your behavior at all, or did you?
Senator, I'm not perfect, and so when I get constructive criticism, I absolutely...
Speak into the mic, please.
When I get constructive criticism, I absolutely take account of that and try and be better at my job, and I did that in that instance. But the characterization in that article by anonymous sources from a whisper campaign from SDNY alums is not accurate.
The fact of the matter is, though, this committee did talk to people who worked for you, and they concluded that you engaged in abusive behavior and that you should be removed, but you got to stay. And the article, you disagree with the characterization, but why would they go through all this trouble to investigate and all of that? And they let you stay, unless I hope that you had said, well, you would change your behavior. Because the attitude, the behavior of a judge, I think is, that is important for us to understand. During your time as a supervisor in the Southern District of New York, you supervised a team that prosecuted U.S. v. Alisater. You supervised them.
Yes.
And in that case, prosecutors failed to disclose evidence to the point where, even though there was a judgment of guilty, so it resulted in the jury's verdict being overturned and the charges dropped. And the district court wrote, which I think is pretty unusual, that there was, and I quote the district court, insufficient supervision. You acknowledged just now that you were the supervisor. Insufficient supervision of disclosure obligations by the USAO's unit chiefs. Do you recall the court making that assessment of your supervisory capability?
I do, Senator, and I respect Judge Nathan, and I think that what she was trying to accomplish in that decision was to make sure that there were protections in place.
Okay,
so
I am running out of time. I just wanted to do, you had said that the January 6 prosecutions were a grave injustice. So does that mean that you agreed with President Trump's pardon of all of the convicted felons?
I am not in a position as a nominee, Senator, to comment on any president's use of the pardon power, which is committed to presidents.
Once again, I should think that because you characterize those prosecutions as a grave injustice, I would think that you would be happy that the president pardoned everybody. Thank you.
Senator Hawley. Senator Hawley.
Mr. Bovig, nice to see you. I enjoyed our conversation the other day. Congratulations on your nomination. If I could, let's turn the focus of the discussion back to the law. I want to talk to you for just a second about your approach to the interpretation of statutes, which is something that we discussed when you and I had a chance to speak earlier. When you encounter, as you will constantly on the Third Circuit, when you encounter an ambiguous statute, what's your general approach? What do you consult? What's your approach to interpreting the text? Give us a sense of how you'll tackle this. What will be a daily occurrence should you be confirmed?
So in the face of an ambiguity, Senator, I would consult the context of the operative phrase, consider the statutory structure, look at usages of similar terms by the operative legislature at the time in question, because I think that matters, as I said earlier, with respect to enforcing bicameralism and presentment, and try to garner as much as can be from those sources, those textual indications. In the event that I think that those textual considerations don't resolve the matter, philosophically, I would be inclined to exercise restraint and not insert myself or a panel of the Third Circuit, if I was confirmed, into a position of declaring what the meaning of an ambiguity is, as opposed to deferring back to the legislature on that topic.
You just used the word text or textualist about 3 or 4 times. Do you consider yourself a textualist? Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, Senator.
Let's just think about a controversy that exists among those who call themselves textualists. Some textualists say that the statute ought to be interpreted, an ambiguous phrase ought to be interpreted according to the public understanding at the time that the statute was enacted. Other textualists, self-identified textualists, say that a text meaning sometimes only becomes clear over time. So there needs to be an elapse of time. You can consider what's happened in a space of time rightly to interpret an ambiguous phrase. Both camps call themselves textualists. Where do you fit?
In the first one, Senator, I think that an interpretive methodology that allows the meaning of a statute to shift over time, potentially over the course of interpretations by different judges under different circumstances or at the whims of policy or political considerations, can be very problematic. If I were confirmed, part of my philosophy would be to do this job pursuant to the limited powers in Article 3 in a way that enhances the democratic features of the political branches. And by that I mean focusing on the text, what it meant at the time it was put on the books, and deferring to those political branches on the other matters.
Okay, good. So I hear you to say that you reject the idea that an X meaning can only become clear over a number of years. You think it ought to be interpreted as understood at the time it was enacted by the public, meaning at that time.
Didn't mean to make you listen to idiots.
Yes, good. Let's talk about substantive due process for just a
the chair of the rest of this hearing, Senator Booker. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one point?
Yeah.
We know we are operating under a 5-minute rule, but you've given some latitude, for example, to the last senator, and I'm not objecting to it.
What do you say?
I'm saying that the time to speak has been 5 minutes established. We've gone over that as a convenience to our colleagues, and I hope we'll continue that.
Okay.
In 2018, Mr. Bovee, a group of federal criminal defense attorneys and former SDNY prosecutors in Manhattan were so alarmed by your pattern of unethical conduct that they wrote your supervisors at SDNY to warn them about you. I'd like to enter into the record a letter that I sent to Acting U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton of SDNY requesting more information about any internal or external complaints about you as a prosecutor. The letter contains the full text of that 2018 email
after this
from
we're going
lawyers
to
in which they describe you, and I'm quoting here.
Hearing.
They describe you as,
There's
quote, vindictive,
a National
always
Guard
looking for leverage and power.
We've got to kind of catch
a prosecutor,
up to, and then
prosecutor version of a drunk driver, completely reckless and out of control, quote, needing adult supervision. One attorney said that you, whatever due justice is supposed to mean, it doesn't apply to Bovee. A former federal prosecutor who later litigated against you said what Mr. Bovee enjoyed most as a prosecutor was wielding power, a quality they described as the single worst possible trait for a public servant.
Behind a bit.
Now, I read these because they're important, that these complaints are not an attempt to derail your nomination. This is from 2018, person after person. These complaints come from attorneys who practiced in federal court, some former federal prosecutors, warning a U.S. attorney's office that one of their prosecutors was, quote, a real recurring problem, and that you were not representing the office in a way that they thought the office would want it represented. Your conduct was so beyond the pale back in 2018 that they wrote your supervisors to say you were a liability for the office. I think this is important because it shows a pattern of behavior. The allegations align with reports about your abuse of power now at the DOJ. I want to follow up in this pattern with what Senator Durbin's questions about the mandatory Teams meeting you scheduled for all remaining public integrity section attorneys on February 14th, 2025. We already know that you're refusing to tell this committee whether you talked to Stephen Miller or others at the White House. All the chiefs and supervisors had resigned at this point, so all of the remaining and available attorneys were line attorneys in that meeting. Is that correct? Approximately 20 attorneys were on the team's call.
I do hope, Senator, that at some point I'll have an opportunity.
You were trying to find 2 attorneys to sign a motion to dismiss the Adams case without prejudice. Is that correct?
Yes.
During the meeting, you told attorneys that it is their job to implement the president's agenda and that they have to follow orders from the president and that there's no room for dissent in the chain of command. Is that correct?
No.
You told them that they had 1 hour to find 2 attorneys to sign the motion. They weren't allowed to ask questions. Is that correct?
No.
You started the meeting by emphasizing to the line attorneys that Danielle Sasson and Hagan Scott had failed to follow orders and that Ms. Sasson was going to be reassigned before she resigned, correct?
Why do they all look like Nosferatu?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the last part of that question.
I will state again. You started the meeting by emphasizing to the line attorneys that Danielle Sasson and Hagan Scott had failed to follow orders and that Ms. Sasson was going to be reassigned before she resigned. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. You also told them that whoever signed the motion would, quote, emerge as the new leaders, end quote, of the public integrity section for doing so,
Where'd
correct?
Where'd that quote come from?
I don't recall saying that.
So you don't know if you said that or not?
But it was a quote.
I don't recall saying that.
You don't recall?
Edward Sullivan volunteered to sign the motion. As promised, Sullivan was promoted to acting chief of the public integrity section for dismissing that case. Is that correct?
Okay.
No.
Oh, it's not?
So you are saying that as the leader of the DOJ, you don't know who is in charge of public integrity?
No, I'm saying that the causal relationship that you implied in your question is not accurate.
Okay.
Okay.
We have you on the record on all of those points.
Wow.
You worked on January 6th cases while a prosecutor at the SDNY, correct?
A supervisor, yes.
An FBI agent described you as treating the January 6th cases as a priority when you were prosecuting those cases. But then you fired dozens of prosecutors and 8 senior FBI officials working on the case. Is that correct?
No.
So, Mr. Bove, I am hoping that more evidence is going to come out that shows that you lied before this committee.
Answering, obviously, just.
And I'm wondering where the lines are for you. What's the line in the sand when you wield awesome power of government? What is that line for you? Because clearly lying to a court isn't a red line. Referring to follow court or refusing to follow court orders isn't a line. Doxing judges and government officials isn't a red line. Intimidating attorneys you supervise into doing things they believe is unethical is not a line. So what's your red line? I really wonder. What could the president ask you to do that you wouldn't do? What wouldn't you do to win? A judge has to uphold core values and principles: independence, impartiality, integrity, diligence. A judge must be free from undue influence. A judge must decide cases fairly without prejudice or favor. A judge must ensure that anyone who appears before them in court will get a fair shake.
Thank you, Mr.
Everything
Booker.
we're hearing you say makes me believe that you're incapable of that. The pattern didn't just begin when you were nominated by this president.
Ooh, Ashley's
Peers of
conflicted.
yours, prosecutors, attorneys who served with you, and judges in your past year have again and again cited you as someone who is not capable or qualified of doing this job in which you're nominated for. Thank you,
Ms.
Madam
Britt.
Chair.
Mr. Bove, thank you so much
what
for
happened
being
to-
here today.
I wish
Thank
I
you
had
for your
the
willingness
gavel.
to serve, and congratulations on your nomination. I heard you in the last exchange say, I wish I had an opportunity to respond. I'd like to give you that opportunity.
That you, President Trump, and it's
Including 50.
yes, Senator.
Okay. And you made a comment in response to Senator Booker, who was asking you questions, and I'll ask these as well, that complaints were never made ethically, and there'd be a responsibility of an attorney to make those ethical complaints under the judicial code. I just have to say I disagree with that. I mean, I was a defense attorney, worked with many prosecutors, had enormous respect for those prosecutors. So the temperament issue doesn't always get into the question of whether it's an ethical violation, but it does get into the temperament and why that, in my view, is very important, whatever our job is, but particularly for a judge where you've got that incredible power. So I do want to go through some of these questions that have been raised by that letter that was sent making some complaints about you. You were described as vindictive. There was references to abuse of power, a refusal to engage in any discussion about the case. And there was one in particular that stood out to me. One of the attorneys in a case involving someone who was detained had information that the person had in fact reported as required. And he was trying to provide you with this information because the hearing about his client's well-being was to take place soon. And it says that you snippily told me that he would not even try to call the PO, I assume that's probation officer, on such short notice after I suggested he could at least try to reach out, and then you might get lucky and catch him. Is that true?
No, Senator, it's not true. And that's exactly the type of issue raised in that email where it's an allegation about an abuse of power that, if
So
true.
you did make the phone call?
I do understand it too,
No,
Carrie.
the whole
I just wish it
episode
was
is described in
different,
that email is not accurate. And if
Well,
any,
I'm not going to
But I
know
understand it.
that,
So
and
no
I'm not sure
worries.
you do, but
Please,
the
don't-
basic
no
point here
apology
is that you could have made a
necessary
phone call that would have resolved the situation of whether that his client had in fact reported or had not, and you wouldn't make it. So you're denying that that's true.
I do deny, and I think the paragraph describes that one of my colleagues stepped in.
All right, let me go on to the next one. Thank you for giving me your answer. The prosecutorial misconduct scandal, that is of concern to me and presumably would be of great concern to you in your job as a prosecutor. And what the judge found, that errors were so severe that following a jury verdict in his favor, the government determined that further prosecution of the case would not be in the interest of justice. I mean, this is a case where there were prosecutorial assets used, there was a conviction, and then the prosecution had to end it, right?
Right, and I was one of the supervisors who participated in that decision because I was so disturbed by the violations that had taken place.
But what the judge said, as I understand it,
agree.
is that
There's some good questions.
you offered
I
little
appreciate
in the
it.
way of supervision.
And so, as I've said, I respect Judge Nathan's decision. That aspect of the opinion.
But he said
Because when
that, right?
Nuremberg 2.0
It said that, but it was
comes
always
along,
difficult for me
Karen,
to
we're
square
gonna
that with the
need
fact
this
that during the
record.
operative weekend, on
Okay.
both days, I was with the prosecutors. The record reflects that I
Evidence.
spoke to the prosecutors at 10 o'clock on Saturday night, at 10 o'clock on Sunday
What is
night.
that?
So again,
Mens
I'm not
rea?
perfect, but I did do my best there. My best wasn't enough, and I acknowledge that. But I don't
So-
think it's true that I didn't work hard on it.
Let me go on to a third thing. In 2020 and 2021, the Southern District's Executive Committee initiated a formal investigation into your conduct. And my understanding is that after that happened, that's when you shortly thereafter left the Southern District. Is that correct?
No.
When did you leave the Southern District?
December of 2021.
December of 2021.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's shortly after the 2021 investigation. Have you ever been asked or had
This
to
guy's
take anger
just like,
management or
keep lying,
behavioral
just keep lying,
management
just
at the
keep lying,
Southern District?
Keep lying.
No.
All right. Who won the 2020 election for President of the United States?
President Biden was certified as the winner of that election.
Oh.
So you give the standard answer. You can't say
Yeah,
that he
you can't
won
say that he won
because he got the
legitimately.
majority of votes and also got the Electoral College victory.
I think the characterizations that you just made, Senator, are both political, and so I can't address them under the
really?
canons.
They're not
and they're also
factual?
tied up in ongoing litigation.
Help me
No, they're not.
understand.
No, they're not. There's no
how
ongoing
it's
litigation.
political to state
What's ongoing
who
litigation
got the
about
most
the
votes in
2020
any election.
election?
Senator, I'm just trying to be precise. The process by which our country declares the victor in an election is a certification process. President Biden was certified.
Wow.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Welch.
Yield back. Thank you.
Wow.
Senator
wow.
Blackburn.
Nope.
Thank you, Madam
No,
Chairman,
I'm not listening
and
to you, Marcia. Get the
congratulations
fuck out
on
of
your
my
nomination. Madam Chairman, I want to talk for a few.
Of discretion under the Constitution.
Questions, and I do have a couple of questions in my time remaining.
Okay.
Mr. Booby, can you share with us how this test went?
Discuss, rewind the video and play it so that you are.
The rule of law.
Sorry, I just have
It's
to jump in.
whether or not a potential nominee is willing to bend or ignore the law to satisfy the president's whims. Now, I understand that elections have consequences, and one consequence is that a president who is elected will get to nominate judges for the duration of his term or her term. But selecting someone with such a deep track record of vindictive, duplicitous behavior, of abuse of power, that is and must be treated as unacceptable. From Mr. Bowie's time with the Southern District of New York to his time representing Donald Trump to his time at the Trump Justice Department, it's been demonstrated that he will not let the law stand in the way of doing what he wants. That's why as soon as Mr. Booby joined the Justice Department in an acting, unconfirmed capacity, he began an effort to purge the Department of Justice of perceived, quote, enemies, like the January 6th prosecutors. He even called the January 6th prosecutions, quote, a grave national injustice, and ordered the FBI to produce a list of everyone involved in them. Never mind the fact that he had previously worked on January 6th prosecutions while at the Southern District of New York. And that's why he ordered Southern District of New York prosecutors to dismiss criminal charges against New York Mayor Eric Adams in exchange for Mayor Adams helping to implement President Trump's radical immigration enforcement plan. Mr. Booby's actions in this case led 8 prosecutors, 8, including the interim U.S. Attorney, Danielle Sassoon, who had clerked for Justice Scalia, to resign. But instead of firing him, Donald Trump plans to give him a lifetime appointment to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals in New Jersey, a state that Mr. Booby has very, very little ties to. Now, it's not just Democrats who are concerned. Conservative judicial activist and former Republican staff member of this committee, Ed Wallen, who wrote that Booby has been called, quote, a savage, and likened him to a, quote, mafia henchman. Not my words, just quoting what's been submitted to this committee for consideration. The Wall Street Journal published an editorial urging this committee to ask questions about Booby's qualifications for this seat. They wrote, quote, does Emil Booby have the right judicial temperament? Does he have a judicial philosophy? It's seemingly clear that the more we learn, the answer is no. But we're here to ask questions, and I do have a couple of questions in my time remaining.
Mr. Bouvier, can you share with us how many of the prosecutors assigned to the Capitol siege section were fired after you sent your memo on staffing at the Department of Justice?
I don't recall.
Ballpark?
I don't recall.
All right. Well, I'll submit that in the form of a question for the record to allow you time to jog your memory banks and try to give us a number, or at least an estimate. Can you tell me how many January 6 rioters President Trump pardoned?
No, I don't recall.
Okay. Well, that actually kind of makes sense because I don't think when asked, the president himself couldn't give an exact number. When asked, his response was, quote, "It would be very, very cumbersome to go and look." You know how many people we're talking about? 1,500 people. To think that on the first day in office, he would have considered case by case that volume
Thank you for
of
bringing
files
that
to
up,
make the determination that they should be pardoned, that's clearly not believable. And we know that dozens of those pardoned had prior criminal records, including rape, sexual abuse of a minor, domestic violence, and more. Yes, I'm talking about the January 6 rioters. I'm going to end with this, Madam Chair. I can tell you that a long-serving prosecutor with the D.C. United States Attorney's Office thought that it sent a message that, quote, political violence toward a political goal is acceptable in a modern democratic society. Mr. Bouvier, you contributed to these actions. What do you think what kind of message do you think this sends to the American people?
I think that the president, in his exclusive discretion under the Constitution.
My question is, what message does this send to the American people? The pardoning of January 6th rioters, many with prior criminal convictions.
And you can answer briefly.
I think that's a question that calls for political views, and under the canons, I'm not
Really?
able to
Not
take a
legal
position.
views?
I thought we were talking about public safety and the rule of law.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great.
Your shift.
All right. I think we're going to end with Mr. Schiff.
Mr. Bouvier, I want to turn to the meeting that Mr. Ravani, the whistleblower, has written an extensive complaint about. The hearing started with the chairman reading a social media post by the Deputy Attorney General Blanche, who is present today but not under oath, nor is that social media post under oath. So let me ask you, since you are under oath, in the complaint it says, Bouvier stated that DOJ would need to consider telling the courts, fuck you, and ignoring any such court order. Did you say anything of that kind in the meeting?
Senator, I have no recollection of saying anything of that kind. To the extent I
Wouldn't you recall, Mr. Bouvier, if you said or suggested during a meeting with Justice Department lawyers that maybe they should consider telling the court, fuck you? It seems to me that would be something you'd remember, unless that's the kind of thing you say frequently.
Well, I've certainly said things encouraging litigators at the department to fight hard for valid positions that we have to take in defense of our clients.
And have you frequently suggested that they say fuck you and ignore court orders? Is that also something you frequently do, such you might not remember doing it on this occasion?
No, and as I explained, I have never directed.
So did you or did you not make those comments during that meeting?
Which comments, Senator?
You really need me to repeat it? Did you suggest, as Mr. Ravani wrote, that DOJ would need to consider telling the courts, fuck you, and ignore any such court order?
I did not suggest that there would be any need to consider ignoring court orders. At the point of that meeting, there were no court orders to discuss.
Well, did you suggest telling the courts, fuck you, in any manner?
I don't recall.
You just don't remember that. Well, let me ask you this. It also says in the complaint, Bouvier indicated and stressed to all in attendance that the planes needed to take off no matter what. These are the planes that a judge was ordering not be used to render people to a maximum security prison outside the country. Did you say during that meeting, did you stress to all in attendance that the planes needed to take off no matter what?
Senator, your characterization is not accurate.
It's not my characterization. It's the characterization of a decorated prosecutor who was in that meeting. Are you saying that he's lying?
As I said, at the beginning of the hearing.
No, I'm not interested in what you said at the beginning of the hearing. I'm interested in whether you stressed to people in attendance that the planes needed to take off no matter what. Did you say that?
For public broadcasting and
I certainly conveyed the importance of the upcoming operation.
Well, don't paraphrase here. Did you tell people in attendance the planes needed to take off no matter what?
I don't recall the specific words that I used.
Wouldn't you recall saying that if you had instructed that the planes needed to take off no matter what, including whether the court ordered otherwise? You wouldn't remember that?
This is a mischaracterization, Senator. There were no court orders at this point.
Well, there was a court order, wasn't there?
No,
wasn't there a court order by Judge Boasberg, if not in this specific case, then in related cases, that people not be sent out of the country until the court could rule? Wasn't there a court order?
Not at the time of that meeting,
Senator. Did you participate in the decision not to disseminate that oral court order prior to the written court order to other agencies so those planes would not take off, so those planes would turn around? Were you involved in the decision to withhold that court order from the responsible agencies?
I think it's clear that I participated.
Yes or no?
I participated in this matter, and I'm not going to get into the contents of legal advice.
I'm not going to take any responsibility on the record.
Thank you. I'm interested in whether you participated in the willful violation of court orders as alleged in this complaint. Let me ask you this, Mr. Bouvet, if there are notes of that meeting, will you provide them to this committee?
The whistleblower information is pinned to the top.
And if the committee requests them, will you provide those notes to the committee?
I defer to the executive branch on the handling of that request.
And let me ask you about notes from another meeting, which you're contesting here, and that is the meeting over the decision to dismiss the case in New York, the corruption case against the mayor of New York. According to Ms. Sassoon, the U.S. attorney at the time, during the meeting with Adams' attorneys, where she described Adams' attorneys repeatedly urging what amounted to a quid pro quo, that you admonished one of the lawyers in the room to stop taking notes. Is that true?
I don't believe I instructed that attorney to stop taking notes. I did remark on the fact that he was taking extensive notes, yes.
And why did it concern you that he was taking notes of that meeting?
Because at that point in the meeting, we were discussing who was responsible for media leaks, and I was making the point that only the prosecutors had created an extensive record that could support detailed leaks.
And you were concerned, were you, that information about this potential quid pro quo might become public? Was that the concern?
I've explained that there was no quid pro quo.
Will you provide the notes of that meeting, which you, according to the U.S. attorney, instructed be collected at the end of the meeting?
I think a member of my staff may have given that instruction outside my presence, and I defer to the committee.
Oh my God, you're blaming it on your staff?
And how those should be
well, I would request
and
that
blame
we
on
seek
staff.
These
Don't
records,
forget
which
that,
go to
Jane.
the truthfulness or lack of truthfulness of this witness. There's a reason why, if I may, my colleagues have gone over at least as much as this. There must be a reason why prosecutors quit rather than following orders from you they considered unethical. There must be a reason why prosecutors complained about you in your own office, why defense attorneys complained about you in your own office.
Good
why
catch,
the judge
Gal. Thank you for bringing this up this morning so that we got some of it in.
Said everything here smacks of a bargain. You testified earlier that the objective evidence overwhelmingly made it clear that it was not a bargain. That there must be a reason why everyone disagrees with you, Mr. Bouvet, and people feel it necessary to give up a job they love at the Department of Justice and quit because they won't go along with what they consider unethical and immoral orders from you. There must be a reason why that is so true of so many, and this court needs to get to the bottom of it. I yield back.
Well, as a former judge, I like being referred to as the court. But as the chair, I will turn it over to Senator
whatever. You get what he's saying.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think robes would look damn fine.
Oh, no, we're done. We're not going to listen to that. Okay, so that's about all of ML Bove that we're going to listen to. But we do have some things in progress. Russ Vogt, namely, oops, which one is where's my guy? Where's my asshole? Where's my asshole? Oh, there she is. All right, so this is in progress, obviously. This is Russ Vogt, the Office of Management and Budget. testifying on the rescission request in a Senate hearing. So this is an important thing, too, related to what we read this morning. Thank you again to Gal for bringing some great gift articles to us this morning in the earlier Wake and Bake about Russ Vogt and what he's trying to do to just run out the clock on this year's funding so they can steal all that money. That's right. But let's listen to how concerned Susan Collins might be about something. I don't even know.
Systems. Testifying on this measure will be the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, Russ Vogt. Director Vogt, we thank you for being with us here today.
All right, I'll let her talk.
We will also receive testimony from Senator Eric Schmidt, who introduced the rescissions legislation, as well as from a committee member, Senator Brian Schatz. The ICA was enacted in the 1970s.
No, I'm sorry, Badger. I'm so sorry.
Constitutional authority with regard to spending. It provides guardrails to ensure that appropriations laws are enforced, while also creating a framework for the president to work collaboratively with Congress to prevent unnecessary expenditures. Under the ICA, the president can propose rescissions, but funding can only be canceled through an act of Congress. I want to emphasize
it's in the Constitution.
That the process provided in the ICA is neither
Even
the only
Bitch Collins
nor the
knows that.
primary way for Congress to effectuate rescissions. This committee
No, the recession is coming too, sweetheart. Don't worry.
Rescissions in its bills. The recent year-long continuing resolution, for example, included nearly 70 rescissions totaling billions of dollars. Turning now to the June 3rd message, I look forward to learning more about the on-the-ground impact of the package, as several of the proposed rescissions do not specify which programs would be subject to reductions within the overall account. For example, the message proposes a $500 million cut to the Global Health Programs account, but it does not indicate whether life-saving programs like Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, would be affected. This amount is on top of program terminations and suspensions pursued as part
Susan,
of the
what do you think? What do you think the
Administration's
answer is,
Foreign
Susan?
Assistance Review and reorganization of USAID. I'm hoping that OMB will clarify the total amount of
she wins
GHP
Maine all the
Global Health
time.
Program
Like, she's a moderate, I
that
guess.
has been halted.
I don't know.
Similarly,
Maybe. I don't know.
the message does
She
not
gets a lot of votes in
indicate
Maine.
whether aid to key
I think just because
allies
she's
like
been around a long
Jordan
time,
and Egypt
frankly.
would be reduced as part
She's
of
relatively
the
ineffective,
$1.65 billion
I guess.
proposed rescission from the Economic Support Fund. The majority of the proposed rescissions to foreign assistance are from fiscal year 2025 funds.
I think they're just like,
proposed
and yellow
rescissions
is
for the
not her
Corporation
color.
for
I'm
Public
sorry. I mean, yeah, maybe
are
not
from
moderate like
advanced
centrist. I don't even know.
appropriations
No, she just
provided
doesn't
for
do
fiscal
anything. What
years
is that?
2026.
What is it when you don't
and
do anything and you just like say
2027?
words?
What this means is that this rescissions package,
Max would
for the
not
most
approve.
part,
I
has
can almost
nothing
guarantee
to
it. I could
do
be wrong,
with
but I
the
don't think she would
lengthy
approve.
list of questionable activities identified by the administration that were paid for with prior year funds.
There might be like, remember
I
the curtain
certainly
rod
agree that the
dress that Carol
taxpayers of
Burnett
the
wore?
United
It could be
States
something of that
should
nature.
not be paying for
I need
things
one,
like
probably.
promoting vegan food in Zambia.
Vegan food.
However, these and other
Look at the staffer
controversial
behind
and
her. The
questionable
staffer behind her's like,
projects
what?
were the product of the misguided priorities of the Biden
Okay.
administration.
The minute you say that, I'm
Under
out.
the current, unless the current administration plans to continue these
My God, how long does this
projects that it has
windbag go?
identified, decisions.
Jesus Christ, she's still going.
Missing
an entirely partisan.
There we go. Let's go back.
It is so. Let's be honest. We are at a crossroads.
There we go. We'll
right
listen
now,
to Patty Murray.
This committee is hard at work as we round out our
Is her
final
name
budget
Patty?
hearings and seek to negotiate bipartisan funding bills. I am pleased with the progress we're making and hope our productive conversations result in bipartisan markups, just as we did in the previous 2 years. After Congress failed to pass full-year bills in the FY25, it is so important that we pass full-year spending bills that deliver the investments that our communities need. And this hearing today asks a very important question. Will Congress stand up and protect its constitutional power of the purse, and will this committee band together to finally say enough is enough and show bipartisanship still matters? Or will we, for the first time ever, pass an entirely partisan rescissions
Will
package
Congress please
and
stand up?
jeopardize
Please
this
stand up.
bipartisan
Please
work?
stand up. I do
I
like
hate to be
Patty.
blunt, but that is the question that is at the heart of this first rescissions request, which would gut
Ooh, he actually made one.
in foreign assistance, reliable local news, and high-quality educational programming. To my colleagues, after our negotiations are done, sometimes hard-fought negotiations, and we thank each other for the bipartisan effort and tell folks back home what we secured, will we let the president then come in and rip that work to shreds? I certainly hope not, because I am truly proud of the bipartisan work that we do on this committee, and I know all of you are as well. I see how personal it is when you advocate for the research hub in your district or for the upgrades
The
to your
jacket
local
color with her hair
military
color
base,
is
or I hear
beautiful.
passionate
That's a beautiful
arguments
combo.
to rebuild a bridge that your communities rely on or support rural areas that are at risk of being cut off. Or I hear really thoughtful debates from this committee about how we strengthen America's role in the world, support small businesses and farmers and tribes, and respond to disasters. And when that discussion is over, we don't just fund the red states when you have the majority and the blue states when we have the majority. We prioritize programs and projects, no matter where they are, based on what members on both sides advocate for. Do I agree with every item in every spending bill? No. I don't think any member of this committee would say they do. But that is what
Yes, Jane,
it
agree.
means to be a part of a compromise and build bipartisan bills for the good of the country. This is true of every bill we do. Each of us knows we are voting for items that are vital to our colleagues just as much as we are voting for priorities that are vital to all of us. And I have offered to the chair and others in this room to do what this committee has always done: consider bipartisan rescissions in our bills through the annual process, which is the right way to do it. But the partisan package before us today cuts to the very heart of the work we do and the very ability of this committee to do it. None of us would sit here and agree to bipartisan bills knowing their partners were just going to gut that deal with rescissions. I hope each of us thinks about that today. And I hope we
Good
will
luck.
consider the genuine damage these cuts would cause as well. If President Trump and Director Vogt get their way and Republicans pass this package, they will not only gut the heart of compromise that this committee is built around, but zero out long-standing
Bye, Chopin's Heart.
bipartisan
Good to see you,
investments.
friend.
They will
Thanks
rip
for coming
away
in.
funding that supports over 1,500 local public TV and radio stations. Rural communities will be the hardest hit, not to mention our kids. There is a reason the American people support continuing these investments by a 2-to-1 margin. Local news gives people information relevant to their daily lives, what community events are coming up, how the school board is preparing for the next year, weather and market reports for our farmers, not to mention the emergency alerts when a disaster strikes. When Hurricane Helene battered North Carolina, the local public radio station was the only source of information about the latest developments for many people. Talk to any parent. They will warn you. If Republicans cuts end up canceling free,
I was listening to
high-quality
Chopin when
programming
I
that
was
is thoughtfully
between shows.
developed to get our kids
That's funny.
thinking and to grow their curiosity, there is an alarming amount of low-quality junk to fill that void, content that is instead carefully engineered to keep kids watching and shorten their attention spans. Trump also wants Congress to surrender America's leadership on the world stage with drastic cuts to long-standing bipartisan foreign policy investments this committee has made. Global health programs that protect Americans by stopping infectious diseases before they ever reach our shores. UN treaty obligations that don't just affect America's credibility and leadership, but also counter the Chinese government as it works to increase investments and influence. And investing in humanitarian aid and economic development pays off for our nation by promoting stability and democracy and strengthening key relationships and a lot more. We can debate the scale of our efforts, but stripping this funding out months after enacting it doesn't serve our interests, especially when director vote won't specify which bipartisan priorities will be cut. Perhaps the only silver lining of this package is the fact that the administration even bothered to send it and acknowledge our laws and the authority of Congress instead of flagrantly breaking the law, something it has done relentlessly under the directorship of Director Vogt. But let's not kid ourselves. This vote does not represent a path back to lawful behavior when Director Vogt continues to, as he says, keep all options on the table when it comes to ignoring the law. Every single one of us should be deeply alarmed by the lawless course the administration is charting here, illegally impounding hundreds of billions of dollars, ignoring provisions of our appropriations law, including pulling down the website detailing how they spend taxpayer dollars in direct defiance of the law that requires that, cherry-picking what emergency funding would be spent. And let's not forget, we have yet to get a detailed agency spend plans for this fiscal year showing how taxpayer dollars are being spent. Even now, Director Vogt is advocating to cut Congress out entirely through the absurdly lawless idea of a pocket rescission. Given that track record, there is no doubt, but no benefit of the doubt the Trump administration gets for coming here. And there is no fixing this package that is a direct threat to continuing our long track record of bipartisan work and holding bipartisan markups this summer. To my colleagues, if we do not reject this rescissions package outright and seriously defend the authority of Congress and work of this committee, we will find very quickly our bills become a lot less important. And our time is consumed by more and more rescission packages to undo the work that we just wrapped up. I really worry in a time when we should be coming together to ensure the safety, economic growth, and security of this country. Instead, we will race forward with rescission package after rescission package. It will
Really?
be PBS
There's a
PEPFAR
Russian plane headed our way?
Maybe family planning, investments in public education.
What's it going to do?
Public schools next. But, you know, I think we are all proud to be on this committee, on this Appropriations Committee. This is a powerful role.
I guess Aeroflot doesn't find it JFK anymore.
But it is not powerful just because. That power comes from our ability to work together to write bills that actually become
All right,
law.
I pinned an archive of an article that we read on this very topic of this hearing. So feel free to refer back to that, the archive article from the New York Times on this very topic.
This committee can and
Pinned to
will
the top.
lose its power, and we are getting perilously close to that line. When I first came to Congress, when I first sought and asked to join this committee for all the reasons all of you joined this committee, one of the hot button issues at that time was the line item veto. President Clinton was seeking to have it. And Chairman Byrd and this committee were organizing against it together. I was asked, should a Democratic Senate help a Democratic president rip up the bills it worked to pass? And I said no. That is not how this should work. I wanted to be on this committee to help my constituents, not to weaken or surrender those responsibilities to any president. I hope my colleagues
Or
understand
they're
that
moron
that is as true
appointees.
for me today as it was then. And if my colleagues agree, which I believe many do, then the course we need to take is clear. We have to reject this package outright and then focus squarely on the job in front of us, writing bipartisan bills for FY26. In the regular course
I
of
like
writing our
that.
bills,
Deep
we can
South
and
Prairie
we will
Galaxy.
consider whether there are targeted rescissions we can agree on, just as we always do. But we must have that conversation together. If our funding bills must be bipartisan, then our funding cuts have to be as well. Otherwise, the entire appropriations process will break down. So I am very pleased today to have this opportunity to discuss why these cuts would be harmful to our communities, but I really want all of my colleagues to fully appreciate why opening this door, even a crack, would be very harmful to this committee and to Congress as well, and what it would mean for the work we all
I wish they cared, Patty. I really wish they cared.
We now turn to our first panel of witnesses. Our colleague from Missouri, Senator Schmidt, introduced the rescission legislation in response to the President's June 3rd special message. We're very happy to have you with us today, and please proceed with your testimony. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Chair Collins, Vice Chair Murray, friends and colleagues on the Appropriations Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about this administration's rescissions request. I'm pleased to join Director Vogt to discuss why the Senate should urgently consider this $9.4 billion package. In early June, the President transmitted a special message triggering a 45-day review by Congress of specific appropriations made in fiscal year 2025. President Trump tasked Director Vogt and his team to begin to thorough scrub of federal programs to ensure they align with the clear mandate to limit waste, fraud, and abuse. That mandate,
is he
received
doggy?
by all of us from voters in November
I don't get.
2024,
I don't get it.
was to shrink government,
No.
to shrink Washington.
No.
And part of that means asking tough questions
Not this one.
regarding the perceived partisan
Not just
leanings
rando
of
cuts.
government entities that should otherwise be apolitical.
Not
These questions should be
anti-diversity,
followed up with action,
equity,
which is
and
why
inclusion.
taxpayer-funded entities such as NPR,
They think they
and
did, but they
PBS
really
be
didn't.
scrutinized. While the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is legally mandated to be non-political in nature and not, quote, contribute to or otherwise support any political party, end quote, the data shows something entirely different.
What?
Research shows
Are you
that
fucking
congressional
kidding me?
Republicans faced 85% negative coverage compared to 54% positive
Because you
coverage
do
of
negative
congressional
shit.
Democrats on PBS's flagship
Because you do
news
negative shit.
and of course, there's NPR, a left-leaning news source
No,
that
it's
refused
not.
to cover the Hunter Biden laptop cover-up,
Oh,
simply stating that they,
my
quote, don't want to waste our
God.
time on stories that are not really stories. And
Well,
do not
that's
want to
their
waste the listeners'
journalistic,
and readers' time on stories
prerogative.
that are just distractions, end quote. It is worth noting that
Proud as a
Congress
guy
isn't the
that
only
can't get
payer for
love
entities
from
under the
me.
Corporation for Public Broadcasting
Proud as
umbrella.
a guy that
Most
can't
are
get
largely
no-
funded and sustained by hundreds of millions of
Wait, I
private
can't remember
dollars
now
through
the
donors,
thing.
corporate sponsors,
Yeah,
foundations,
he's an
and
idiot. Why
state
is
and
it
local
telling me to
governments.
show it?
Furthermore,
So weird.
and for those who've expressed concern, by moving forward with this rescission, the Corporation for
You're
Public
a scrub.
Broadcasting accounts would be not touched in, as the chair mentioned, for fiscal year 2025. In
Oh,
fact,
really?
For the
Have
last
they gotten
50
all their
years,
grants
Congress has
paid?
provided two-year advanced appropriations to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting to help facilitate long-term programming decisions for stations.
What?
The rescissions we're discussing for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting are not for FY25.
Oh,
For Corporation
you're just cutting
Public
it for
Broadcasting, this
October
will reduce
1st.
funding for
I see.
FY26 and FY27. Entities who
God.
receive funding under the Corporation for Public Broadcasting have time to readjust their budgets
What?
and plan accordingly. For foreign aid,
It's going to kill
the
small
President's rescission
stations that
package leaves
carry
intact a
public
significant
radio.
amount of
You
funding
know that,
for
right?
PEPFAR,
Do we know
for
that?
PEPFAR,
Anybody?
something I'm aware
Everyone?
that many members on this committee care deeply about. We can and should have a broader debate about our role, but for the purposes of this rescission package,
I've become numb.
these cuts are
I'm just
surgical
numb now.
and specifically preserve life.
I don't know. Something snapped.
In fact, this program will continue to allow.
I don't know what to say.
This program will continue to allow PEPFAR to carry out its long-established mission to provide life-saving services.
Yeah, they just moved it somewhere
What this
else. I
package
mean, there's
does
no
cut
reason to cut.
is numerous
Oh my God.
instances of egregious examples of blatant government waste and abuse, just to
What?
name a few.
Show 'em. Show 'em.
$35 million to address vasectomy messaging frameworks and gender dynamics in Ethiopia.
Yeah. Okay,
$3 million
exactly, because there's
for Iraqi
violence that
success
results
initiative.
from that.
$500,000 for electric buses in Rwanda.
Because that's a good use of energy in that country.
Sex workers and their clients in sexual networks in Nepal.
Exactly, because there's a ton of violence against transgender people across the globe.
Gender and inclusive development experts.
That's right. This is all good stuff.
Teaching young children how to make environmentally friendly reproductive health decisions.
Why wouldn't you do that?
$4 million for sedentary migrants in Colombia.
Why wouldn't you do that to help them?
This committee, and I think this
Why
is a
wouldn't
very
you help
important
other
point.
countries and invest?
This committee did not line item these programs.
Wow, it's like
An appropriation
hiding
was
all
sent
your
to the State
guys'
Department,
messages.
and some bureaucrat violated the trust of the American people.
Weird.
With these outrageous programs, and dare I say, with this committee.
They're not outrageous. They're normal,
Why
and
are we
they're
investing
measured, by the
millions of
way.
dollars in something as wasteful as recruiting.
I'm just going to tell you right now, as we've spoken about, I have worked on grants for over 20 years, including international development grants and including USAID money that comes through. They are among the most difficult, well, in fact, they are the most difficult grants to get, first of all, very competitive. And they're also very difficult grants to maintain because the specificity that you have and the restriction on how you spend the money is to the penny. And it's very restrictive. And you have to tell them ahead of time what you're going to do with the money, how you're going to spend it, who you're going to work with, and how you're going to evaluate the success of what you did. All of that has to be in place before a single dime is approved. And then, once it is approved, you have to go through very, very significant reporting on a regular basis. I think quarterly, I can't recall, but I think it's quarterly, then plus an annual report to USAID about how you use the money and whether or not your program was successful. And that, by the way, those are called monitoring and evaluation, or M&E. And your M&E has to be significant. It's not just, oh, we did a survey. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. There's actually has to be multiple, what they call key performance indicators, identified ahead of time. I can't tell you just how fucking ridiculous it's been to watch USAID, for as an example, completely cut apart. It is absolutely galling to me that you've taken probably the most responsible grants, government grants, right? Very restrictive. You've taken the most responsible grant seekers and you fuck them over. And if I recall correctly, they're withholding money from FY25. That's not just, he's lying. Because there is a plan, there are grants that have not been paid. Okay, so let's stop, double talking this. Okay, so I'm going to move ahead because I don't really give a shit what this guy says, and we'll see where we're at.
Colleagues are being asked on this committee sounding things.
I like Brian.
Commitment to the future of this country.
I think we like
Thank
Brian.
you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity to engage with this committee on this important.
Sorry, I don't remember. Again, I'm numb.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Senator Schatz, thank you for being here also.
Thank you, Chair Collins, Vice Chair Murray, members of the committee. This is the first time I've been on this side of the dais. I have to say
Hi, Peter.
the altitude.
Was there an M&E in
affecting me a
SpongeBob
little bit.
SquarePants?
It really is an honor to be here to argue against this rescissions package on behalf of all of you, as appropriators. And now I want to be abundantly clear. I like Eric Schmidt a lot, but this is a very important point, and it's actually fatal to the rescissions package. Every single program that Senator Schmidt just mentioned has already been canceled. Every single program, and there's a longer list that was on a Fox News Chiron, and Senator Graham and I have kind of gone over all of this. There are a bunch of different examples of terrible sounding things. They are all done, and they all belong in the previous federal fiscal year. So now that it's Marco Rubio's
Brian's really
State
smart.
Department and Marco Rubio's USAID agency, and now that it is Donald Trump's White House, none of these things are happening. This is a rescission of Trump's CR in the current federal fiscal year. And so if you have a problem
peace, love,
with
they
any of those
understand it. This is
let
by
Lindsay
design.
and I write a bill that prohibits the use of funds for any of those seemingly improper uses of funds. That's the way to do this. Colleagues are being asked on this committee to cut programs that I know each one of you have personally prioritized, because we get the letters, whether you're the chair or the ranker of a subcommittee, you get a letter from your colleagues saying, could you please prioritize XYZ program? And many of the programs that I'm talking about right now, in the same time period, we are receiving letters, please save this, please save that, please plus up that. That's what we're cutting right now in this rescissions package. We do not have to spend foreign assistance dollars in the same way that we always have been spending foreign assistance dollars. There's plenty of room for reform. You're pushing on an open door. And in fact,
listen, I can't stand government funding. It's fucking impossible.
There's no rush on this. This is 2-year money to align this funding with its new priorities. But we're being asked to rescind billions of dollars without even knowing which programs are being canceled. Just so you understand how this legislation works, it's big baskets of money. So you have no idea whether the program that you are prioritizing is going to be cut or not, and they are not providing any clarity about that. You would think that if you're asking the Congress to use this extraordinary authority under statutory law, that you would have a line by line, here's what we're cutting, here's what we're keeping, here's what we're cutting, here's what we're keeping. The answer that we are going to receive is, let me take that under advisement and get back to you, or
come into my office.
That's none of your business, or I'm not sure what it is. There is no reason not to have specificity other than the math doesn't add up. The things that you care about are being cut in here, and they don't.
I hate that, Jane, but it really is powerful.
That brings me to what is definitely in this package. $900 million in cuts from global health programs, including PEPFAR and efforts to combat diseases like malaria, TB, and polio. $1.3 billion in cuts to humanitarian assistance, which save lives, provide food and shelter and water, and support victims of sexual assault. And $4.6 billion in cuts to economic development assistance to key partners, whether it's Jordan with increasing regional tension, the Philippines as it counters Chinese aggression, the Burmese opposition, or Ukraine. And gone is $1 billion in support for organizations like UNICEF. Everybody that was opposed to those things that were on that Fox Chiron, everybody that found some of the things that Senator Schmidt talked about as objectionable also hastened to say, I don't want to cut UNICEF, I don't want to cut PEPFAR, I don't want to cut the World Food Program. Guess what is in this rescissions package? All of those things are being cut, and none of the things that you object to. They've already been eliminated. This is not just a question of policy. This is also a question of what this committee is even for. Being a Senate appropriator is an honor. It means something. It means that the executive branch proposes and the legislative branch disposes. It means that we, as the Article I branch, hold the purse strings, that is subject to cloture. So what's at stake here is more than the particular provisions of the rescissions package. It is whether we're going to willingly set up a situation where bipartisan negotiations are ripped up whenever there is a trifecta. If that's what you want, I think you should vote yes. But if you want to preserve your prerogative for yourself, for your home state, and for this institution, then this is not a particularly close call. Why be an appropriator and just turn around and surrender your authority? Because it is SFOPs today.
Because
it's going to be THUD, it's going to be AG, it's going to be Labor H, it's going to be Milcon VA, it's going to be CJS tomorrow. So I encourage all of my colleagues on a bipartisan basis to think hard about the precedent that we would be setting if we voted yes on this package. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Senator Schatz. I want to thank you both for taking the time to look at the rescission package and share your thoughts with us. Thank you. I now welcome Russell Vogt to the witness table. You will be removed from the budget. Director Vogt previously served in the same position during the first Trump administration. Director Vogt, you're welcome to make an opening statement at this time.
Thank you, Chair Collins. Chair Collins, Vice Chair Murray, thank you for having me here today.
The hearing will suspend. The hearing will suspend. I recognize that people feel passionately, but we must have order in the hearing room so that we can proceed. And if anyone else
people
is
die.
thinking of trying
I'm so
to
sorry, I
disrupt
couldn't make out
this
exactly what they were saying.
You will be removed from the hearing room by
That
the
is
Capitol
democracy in
Police
action.
if you choose to do so. I think it's important that we allow the American people to hear from our witnesses and their senators.
And thank you for standing up and disrupting. I appreciate that as well.
And professional manner. If we could shut the door, please.
Vote lied, people died. Well, that's true.
Mr. Vogt, please proceed.
Thank you. I'm here to testify
So
on the
thank them for their
administration's
service.
$9.4 billion rescissions package. This package reflects the Trump administration's steadfast commitment to cutting wasteful federal spending, antithetical to American interests, and correcting our fiscal trajectory. Over the past 5 months, members of this body and the House of Representatives have consistently requested that the administration send a rescissions package to codify the work of DOJ into law. The House of Representatives recently passed this package in full, and it is critical the Senate swiftly do the same. The rescissions package is not a new one, though it has fallen into disuse over the past 2 decades. Every president, from Gerald Ford through Bill Clinton, successfully rescinded funds. Rescissions were often bipartisan and were once a regular feature of the budget process. In fact, in the past 42 years, only 3 presidents have not proposed rescissions to Congress. Today, I sit before you as the first White House official to testify on a rescissions package in decades, if not ever, to explain the proposal and demonstrate the administration's commitment to reining in federal spending. The package the Senate will soon consider was carefully crafted with input from Congress to cut funding the American people find wholly objectionable. The proposal would rescind $1.1 billion in funding to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which has funded a politically biased public media system that has promoted radical and divisive ideologies at the American taxpayers' expense.
Yes, thank you, Max. The demonstrators were pro-PEPFAR. Thank you.
NPR and PBS for decades, and with good reason. Many members of this body have made the case eloquently, and the leadership of NPR's own actions and testimony have left no doubt as to their agenda. There is no longer any excuse for tax dollars to subsidize these radical far-left networks. If you would like to donate to them on your own, you are more than welcome to do so as a taxpayer.
But they teach kids how to read and shit, sir.
The proposal would also rescind $8.3
He doesn't want
billion
people
in
to learn how to
funding for the
read.
State Department, USAID, and other foreign aid that has been used to advance left-wing causes
No, it
abroad to the
hasn't.
detriment
You're
of
just
the
a weird
recipient nations and our
Christo-fascist,
own.
you fucking Nazi.
It is critical that this body and the American people writ large
He's so pathetic.
understand that
I just don't
many foreign aid
understand
programs
why
use
you want to
benevolent-sounding
support such a
titles to
pathetic.
hide truly appalling activity that is not in line with American
I love that they're making noise
For
in the hallway,
example,
Jane. I think
under
it's
the guise
wonderful.
of so-called preventative care within PEPFAR program, Americans have been funding the following: $5.5 million to LGBTQ advocacy in Uganda.
Yeah, to make sure people are
$800,000
aware
for
of what they
transgender
can,
people,
how they can
sex
protect
workers, and their
themselves.
clients in Nepal.
Yes,
3.6
exactly, because
for
there's a lot of
LGBTQ
sex trafficking
activism,
that
free
happens in
training
Nepal.
pastry cooking, psychosocial counseling, a cyber cafe,
Very
and the
important to
dance
help
focus groups for
help
male
communities
prostitutes in Haiti.
get healthy.
And 1.1 million
I can
to
tell you
produce
Haiti needs
Gender
help on every
Transformation
front.
in Diverse Social and Behavior Change report, which advocates, again, quote, gender blindness. Most Americans would be shocked and appalled to learn
Really,
that
Gal?
their tax dollars, money they thought was going to medical care, was actually going to far-left activism, population
That's not
control, and
activism.
sex
That's
workers.
helping people protect
To be clear,
themselves.
no
That's
life-saving
not
treatment
partisan.
will be impacted by this.
That has nothing to do with
rescissions
left or
package.
right. It was
Anyone
also
currently
funded under
receiving life-saving
Republican
treatment
administrations, by the way.
will continue to receive that treatment. In fact, over $16 billion worth of global health funding will remain after the rescission, nearly $10 billion of which is dedicated to PEPFAR
Yeah, I know,
alone.
Peter. It's a good one.
This will take 2 to 3 years to spend out.
Let me see
and
if I
of
can
course,
find
this is
that,
after
Gal.
the U.S. has provided $120 billion through this program, or over $6 billion each year since its creation. We're now up to $10 billion per year. At $37 trillion in debt, can we not pull back $400 million? Other examples of the type of spending proposed for rescissions are almost comically wasteful. For example, complex crisis funding money went to voter ID in Haiti. Development assistance funding has been
That's a
used
great
for
idea.
net
They need
zero
a lot of
cities in
infrastructure.
Mexico, electric buses in Rwanda, and critic powder in
Here we go. We're going again. We got the same list,
Global
guys.
health money went to the International Planned Parenthood Foundation and UNFPA.
Let's make a donation in his
funding went
honor.
to
How about
social
that?
media
Who's in?
mentorship in Serbia and Belarus. The
An
Clean Technology
89-year-old
Fund
vet.
was
I'm
used for wind
appalled and
farms in
shocked
Ukraine. The list goes on.
at that, and
The American
people
people
zip-tied
didn't
in
fund this. They
wheelchairs.
didn't
Oh my
intend to, at
God.
least.
Oh, here we go.
They
Thank you,
didn't
Gal,
vote
for the
to
link.
continue the Washington status quo. The entire federal government must be responsible with each taxpayer dollar that comes to Washington.
Oh,
The
shit,
American
man.
people
Oh,
voted for
shit.
change. President Trump stands ready to put our fiscal house back in order and put the American taxpayer first. A vote for rescission.
Shut up. Shut up. Your mother even hates you. God, how embarrassing. How embarrassing to be you. How embarrassing to be you. One day at a time, sweet Jesus. One day at a time. I just want to sing. That's really all I want to do. I need to focus more on the stuff that I just want to do, which is singing, because other stuff is not really that effective. Well, not that singing will be effective, but it'll make me happy. That's a good thing. I don't need to do anything. Okay, let's watch this fucking nonsense. This is outside that hearing. That's the link that Gal shared. Major breaking, call to activism. Moments ago, the Russell Senate office building, Medicaid activists in wheelchairs were arrested by Capitol Police for staging a sit-in. The banner was snatched and their wrists tied with zip ties. So, there's that.
Decisions is a vote to show that the United States Senate is serious about getting our fiscal house in order. I hope that the Senate will join
You're
us
not
in that
serious.
fight.
We know all
I look
about
forward
your
to answering
plans,
your
you
questions.
stupid fuck.
Thank
You're dumb.
you, Director. First of all, you just gave us a list that is very similar to ones that all of us have read
Yeah.
and that I addressed in my opening statement. These are programs that were funded in the Biden administration. There's no way that President Trump's administration would allow such wasteful and questionable spending. So I am puzzled why you would be cutting funds that the president signed in March as part of the continuing resolution.
Oopsie.
When now your appointees are there to
I agree,
prevent
Meowing
the kind
Star.
of spending that
I agree.
most of us would find to be reprehensible and a waste of
I agree.
taxpayer dollars.
Thank you
I
for the
agree with you,
question, Senator. And I
Morningstar.
was, in listening to the opening statements, I was encouraged to hear the bipartisan outrage for some of these programs.
What?
I would add a
Whose?
couple points in direct response to your question,
I might be
Senator.
moving on.
These are largely multi-year
Call his
funding.
ex-wife as a witness.
There is some expiring funds with regard to fiscal year 25, but the way that this was structured was to find the waste, the abuse.
But what you
the
aven't
average
done,
on an
no
annual
one has seen a
basis for
report on
grants
that.
Get re-upped each
You
and
can't
every
just
year.
make it up.
And so we are in $37 trillion in national debt.
No, that's
Our
not going to
view is
help,
to
though.
see, when we look at these programs, can we do it cheaper as evidence about what we
But you
find?
haven't analyzed any of it.
Reflect that with some savings to the taxpayer.
You
We
haven't
think that we're
analyzed any
doing
of
that
it.
here, and that is the extent to which we don't want to just plow it into additional spending. We actually want to have it lead to a more efficient federal program in the area of PEPFAR or whatever economic development assistance
They're
that we might
lying.
find.
They're just lying.
The other thing I
Okay,
would
he's
say is
lying.
the extent to which
What do we
the
got
normal
here?
pipeline for these funds
Here we go.
is something we're taking a
That's what we
close
got.
look at. I mean, we don't want to re-up the same
That's what we
spending
have.
to the same NGO with a different
I want to
grant
see the
title.
list of
That's
waste,
not
fraud, and
success
abuse.
here.
It's not just their
And so it will
feelings
take
about
some
programs they
time for
don't
us to be
like
able to
because they
find,
hate
the
themselves.
types of groups that can dispense these funds in ways
That's
that are
for
consistent
therapy.
with this administration's priorities.
Not for policy.
Well, let me also take issue with your statement that, quote, no life-saving treatments will be impacted. When
Wow,
you
look at her
at
concerned.
PEPFAR, you are eliminating a lot of the prevention programs. And just this past week, the FDA approved a twice-yearly injection that provided significant
saving people's
protection
lives.
against HIV infection in clinical trials. We've seen literally 26 million lives saved through a combination of prevention
Susan,
and treatment.
he doesn't give a flying
We can't
fuck.
tell in looking
He
at the
wants gay
information
people to
that you've
die.
given us,
That's what
because
Russ
it's
Vogt
not
wants.
specific
I
whether
hate
the
to break it
rescission
to
would
you,
harm our
Susan.
efforts
I know you
to
love the Pride Parade.
prevent the spread of tuberculosis.
You like to pride wash
or
yourself
polio
every once in a
or
while,
malaria.
Susan.
Those are all programs that have been proven
But they don't give
effective.
a shit.
I'm particularly
Why
concerned
are you not
also
paying attention,
about what
Susan?
the impact would be on the maternal and child health programs. We
Are
can't
lying.
tell, but we do know that important food supplements, the ready-to-use therapeutic food that I'm showing you right here, which is peanut butter-based but greatly enriched, have saved the lives of premature babies and malnourished children. We know that these
Susan,
prenatal
he doesn't
vitamins
care.
have allowed impoverished mothers
They
in
want
Africa
impoverished
to
mothers
safely
to
deliver
die.
healthy children.
Oh my God.
These are not only the right thing to do for humanitarian reasons, but they're
My God, you're in the
incredible
wrong party,
instruments
girl.
of soft power. So let me ask a specific question.
Wow, it sounds
Does
like you're
your
really in the voting
rescissions
Democrat
package
thing
cut
these days.
the life-saving multivitamins for pregnant mothers and
They're sitting in
the
Susan
food
Collins' office.
supplement that's used for malnourished children?
No, we apportion that funding consistent with this administration's priorities, and that funding is flowing. What we are getting at is the preventative, and I do put it in air quotes. I'm not saying there's not good preventative care, and the example that you gave with regard to drugs that are being approved just this week in FDA are in another category of drugs that will largely be protected, certainly will under this rescissions bill. And again, there's $10 billion left for PEPFAR, even if this rescissions bill were to pass. What we're getting at is the extent to which we have identified in
how much did you
literally
cut?
every program. Part of the exercise here is that all of these programs are in some respects in the dock because we have identified the extent to which all of them are funding liberal NGOs doing activities that the American people wouldn't support. And that just because they're in the
That's what
PEPFAR
people
account shouldn't
voted
make
for.
them immune for a rescission.
The Congress already had these arguments. The Congress argued whether or not to fund these agencies. This is a power grab, and it is not legal, and you wouldn't want it if it were a Democrat. Okay? Nobody wants this. I know you want to think you want it. You want a daddy real bad, but you don't want this daddy. This daddy wants to kill you.
And so when we look at preventative and we're saying in $9.3 million to advise Russian doctors on how to perform abortions and gender analysis, 4.4
That's
in funding
important.
to recruit gender and inclusive development experts.
That's
45
important
million
because people,
International
there's
Planned
violence in
Parenthood
communities
Federation.
as a
This
result
isn't
of not
the American
doing
people. If we
educational
went to a diner
programming.
and we said, what is preventative care? And we included
That
all
is
manner of
preventive
doctors
care.
in that diner conversation. And said, what's the kind of preventative care that you would support and you think would make sense? My guesses would be in the area
But you're
of the
not
drugs
the
that you
expert.
mentioned. My
You
guess is it would
hand that
also
over
not
to
include this
experts
kind
to
of
make
waste
that
and
decision when
abuse.
they're grant
This is
making.
actual savings
There's
to the
actual
taxpayer that we
experts
could
in the
recoup.
fields that are
And at
making
the end of this
decisions
rescissions package,
to
still
fund
have
or
$38
not
billion
fund.
in
Oh my God.
unobligated
Or to
balances,
allocate and
$10
or not
billion
allocate.
in unobligated balances for PEPFAR.
But Director, those kinds of wasteful expenditures are not going to
They're
occur
not wasteful.
in this administration. That's my whole point. And I know for a fact that both of these products, which are made
you need to bottom line a
entirely
lot better.
in America, are being held up. This peanut butter-based supplement is in a warehouse, and there's worried by the private foundations that are contributing to the undertaking
which
of
is
this
true. There's
program
always
that they're going
co-funding,
to
by the way.
expire because they can't get
Programs
the
aren't
federal
solely
funding
funded by
to
USAID
distribute them.
in general.
Senator, the funds were apportioned. We're happy to look into. There has been a lot
Look
of news
into.
out there with regard to what is occurring.
Look
I just
into.
read this morning with regard to one of the drugs that you just mentioned. And again, we have it protected with regard to this rescissions
So you just
package.
cut it,
so
and then
I
people have
understand
to ask
we
for it
haven't
to
been
be
in the
put
business
back
of doing
in?
rescissions packages
What
for
the
quite
fuck?
some time.
How
We're
fucking
getting
lazy.
those muscle memories going again.
You're a fucking
but
lazy bitch.
We can work with Congress to make sure these types of things
Wow.
are
I'm
protected
going to
on
need
an
to get
ongoing
out of the
basis.
house.
But
I have an appointment
I do
in
believe
a few
it's important
hours.
to
So
have a reflection on the fact that if you find savings,
he
and you know
wasn't
that
elected.
generally occurs on an annual grant by grant process annually, can you rescind that money in such a way that we actually get something for it? And I am worried, Senator, about the extent to which if we just have the same amount of money that's there annually, and you just say it's got to go, that you are putting massive pressure on the bureaucracy to get it out the door to the same NGOs that we are now here to deal with the extent to which they have been wasting
yeah. So
the
can we
American
talk
people's
about
hard-earned
the
tax dollars.
elephant in the
I am
room?
concerned about that.
Oh,
Senator
whoops.
Merck.
Sorry.
If you don't mind, just one point of clarification. The stuff you read, did that come from PEPFAR?
Yes.
Okay.
What?
Thank you. When I cut a deal with Chair Collins or Senator Graham or any of my Republican colleagues, there may be parts of it I do not like or they do not like, but we know what we agreed to and passed into law is something we can count on. And that is absolutely essential to getting the 60 votes to make this appropriations process work. But what we are here today talking about is one party rescinding funding provided with 60 votes with just a simple majority. And if that becomes the new normal for how this body operates, that is going to make our appropriations bills extremely hard to negotiate. So as we consider this package, this committee deserves to understand the whole picture of this administration's plans before making a decision on this request. So if this package passes, do you intend to send more rescission requests to Congress?
Senator, that's up to the president. It's certainly an option. It's an option that I've stated publicly that we will strongly consider, but that's up to the president. And it's, we will take that on a week-by-week basis. But there is more, honestly, than $9.4 billion that we've identified. There's $163 billion in fiscal year 26 that we have identified for less spending than
So these
prior
were bills
budgets.
that this committee approved on a bipartisan basis. How many packages are you talking about, and what are they?
Again, we have no decisions on those have been made, but we do want to see how successful
They're
this
just
effort
holding
is.
up the funds.
When I went through
You're
the
holding up the
confirmation
funds.
process, you specifically were reminding me of the Impoundment Control Act's process to be here and to bring forth rescissions if we find waste, fraud, and abuse, and to give Congress an opportunity to vote on those, and that's what we're here to do. And
Well,
and again, I think you're also making a point about process. From Gerald Ford to Bill Clinton, it was totally normal for the appropriations process
Correct,
to
and I
consider
will just
rescissions.
remind all of us that the Appropriations Committee worked on those in a bipartisan
Exactly.
way. They were not partisan packages
Hello.
that were sent up.
Thanks.
What I'm hearing you answer me is that there will be
Patty
more.
knows what she's fucking talking
You don't
about.
know how many more, but there will be more. So this committee and this Congress could spend a lot of time going forward on requests for cuts if this package passes. Director Vogt, when asked about this request, you have said that no matter how Congress acts on this request, impoundment is still, quote, on the table. And in an acknowledgement of how unpopular your cuts to bipartisan priorities are, you even publicly said you may well try to do an end run around Congress by requesting rescissions in the last 45 days of the fiscal year, and then pretending that even if Congress fails to approve them, you can rescind those funds anyway. So let me tell you, that is not how the law works. The president does not have a line item veto, much less a retroactive line item veto. Your notion of this pocket rescission defies common sense and, by the way, the plain text of the law. Director Vogt, will you commit to this committee that you will not
Please hit
attempt
the like
to
or the
do
dislike.
an end run around
They both
Congress
help.
with this
Thanks.
so-called pocket rescission, something members on both sides of this dais have made clear is outright illegal?
Senator, there's a lot of
I can go for at least 2 more hours
into,
before I have to leave for my
previous
appointment.
comments.
So
I would just say that we believe that we have, under the law, numerous
there's other
options
hearings we
with
have to catch
regard
up with,
to
too.
how to achieve savings, including rescissions that are timed at the end of the fiscal year.
Savings?
General
So
accounting
No.
officers
That's not your
articulated
job.
Answer,
Earlier
right?
in the life of the
This should
Impoundment
be a
Control
yes
Act.
or no, and what I hear you is all kinds of word salad to make sure that you are letting us know that you intend to do things that are outside the intent of the law. And it has also been reported that you are considering sending Congress a massive deferral package under the ICA in an attempt to run out the clock and avoid legal scrutiny
you, Patty.
of this administration's illegal freeze before ultimately impounding the funds at the end of the fiscal year. Can you commit to this committee that there will be no deferral package?
We certainly are aware of the deferral provisions in the Impoundment Control Act. There are specific statutory requirements there that if we are in a situation where funds may meet those definitions, they are certainly on the table. But again, we have made no decisions. The president has not made any decisions with regard to those different tools that
yes,
that
it's on the
exist.
table.
And so I'm here to talk about one package. There's been one
understand that, but
decision
I-
on one package, $9.4 billion.
Director Vogt, I just want to be clear to all of us about what's going on here. You are actually telling Congress, in total disregard for Congress's Article I powers, that you and the president will just impound or rescind funds that you don't agree with on your own. And Congress, I will say to all of my committees, should not stand that from this president or any president in the future. And I think that's really important as we consider this. Quickly, Director Vogt, to justify the $8.3 billion you
background
proposed
on the Impoundment
in foreign
Control
assistance,
Act dropped
you've
in the
argued
chat.
that these funds were used by the
Please share the
administration
broadcast.
for woke programs or things not aligned.
Please
to
hit the
Trump
like.
priorities. That's not how
Do
this
all the
works.
things,
Whatever
please.
the
Thank
Biden
you.
administration may or may not have done, most of what you are proposing, as has been talked about here, to rescind is Congress provided this administration in the FY25 CR, the same CR that President Trump signed into law in March. And while Congress has provided instructions for target countries and sectors and purposes, this administration has
sanctions and
flexibility
shit.
to determine how best to meet those bipartisan objectives. So you are waving around a tiny cherry-picked list of past initiatives funded by those accounts, it's irrelevant when the simple fact that you and this administration now determine how those funds are being provided by Congress and are specifically put to use. And yet conveniently, you have not spelled out for this committee and the public what you plan to cut if this package passes, even if you ask us to vote on it. So will you tell us specifically, and I'm asking you 2 questions, tell us specifically which global health programs, malaria, TB, polio, funding for Gavi, are you going to cut?
Again, we have 2 main reductions in global health.
Can you tell us specifically
we have
on any of those
$500
today?
million for family planning and $400 million to PEPFAR.
But you're not going to tell us which programs. Okay. Will you tell us specifically where the Philippines, Pacific Islands, Jordan, you're planning to undermine American interests?
Of course not. We've been very clear in all of the administration's priorities that all of our commitments with regard to Jordan and Egypt are maintained. Again,
I know, but she was right on both words.
But I assume you're unwilling to share which humanitarian crisis this
Yes, everybody's
administration plans
tired.
to walk away with, which is what we would be voting on, and that is critical information.
Senator, there's no difference between how we've constructed the
Reclaiming my
rescissions
time.
based on how you all, when you send the original bills up in terms of the allotment
That
account.
is the final decision,
And I just would like to
shithead.
say this because it's my first time with the Appropriations Committee. I don't think there's a more important principle than the notion of the congressional appropriations power.
Really?
In ensuring
Then why
that
are you acting like you
federal
are?
agencies cannot spend without an appropriation from Congress. I think
Right.
that is paramount.
Yeah.
It's linked with the Anti-Deficiency Act.
Okay,
which
so
is
why
one of
are
the
you
most
speaking out of
important
both sides of
statutes
your
that
mouth?
that we are the ones that
Why are
work
you letting
on
him
at
go on?
OMB. And so I think that the extent to which that is understood properly for the record is something that I want to make sure I had an opportunity to
That
say.
is not, he said
Senator
nothing.
McConnell, and my
He
thanks to
said
Senator Hyde-Smith.
nothing. He said nothing. That's fucking unacceptable. He said nothing. Wow. Wow.
Senator McConnell, you're recognized.
Oh no. Is it Mitch, the bitch? Is he still alive? Oh no, we're not doing that. I'll let him start, but then I'm gonna fucking.
Thank you, Senator Collins.
Oh, dear.
I'll start by associating myself with the comments at the same time. Talk most
Well,
open.
okay, I guess I'll listen to
supporters
him because he's
important
gonna die
statutes
soon.
country, Built some pretty good relationships.
We'll let him talk a
particularly
little bit.
In countries in the Middle East that certainly wouldn't be described as democratic. Reforming
care
the
about
way
that now?
we invest in peace and stability is certainly worthwhile. And there's plenty of absolute nonsense masquerading as American aid that shouldn't receive another
Well, then that's part of the
bit
grant
of
process,
taxpayer
shithead.
funding. But the administration's attempt to root it out has been unnecessarily chaotic. In critical corners of the globe, instead of creating
Mr. Vaught, what's my life
efficiencies,
expectancy under your cost-cutting
you've created
regime?
vacuums for adversaries.
I thought he
like
was already
China
dead.
to
I'm going to
fill.
be honest. I had this guy Kissinger a long
Responsible
time ago.
investments in soft power
I'm
prevent
always surprised when he
conflict,
talks.
preserve
And
American
turtle,
influence,
turtle.
and save countless of lives.
I don't want to
At the
be
same
anti-turtle though.
So if we're concerned about
But we're not,
spending, and we should be,
baby.
it's important to remember
Baby,
what
we're
wars
not concerned
cost.
about spending. Have you seen the new
At the height
package,
of
the
World War
bub?
II, 37% of our GDP was spent on defense. In Korea, 13%. In Vietnam, 9%. The Reagan buildup, only 6%. Obviously, peace through strength means more than just saying it. It means actually demonstrating it.
What does this mean? Where are you going with this?
So that's just a fact.
Okay, so that was nothing. Thank you, Mitch. All right,
Very little
time to go.
Tuning rather, you
Bye.
said we have to use the future
My
year
God, he's still
impacts of
talking.
major reconciliation
Jesus
bill.
Christ on a cracker. This guy is still
Finally,
talking.
do you even believe
I'm
we
so
need
sorry.
sustained growth above inflation in our defense budget? Or should we expect annual cuts from this administration like we got from the Biden administration?
Thank you,
I
Senator,
hate
for the
him.
question, and I
We
do
all
appreciate
hate him.
acknowledging the extent to which our budget does include both the
He
base and
could
the
slip into neutral
reconciliation
at any moment.
levels.
I just
and
don't like
understand
him.
there's
I don't
disagreement on
need to.
that front.
I'm not
Just
attacking
from our
his
perspective,
current state
we
of health.
believe that the current appropriations process
I laugh at his
to some
politics. I
extent
laugh at his
broken.
lack of
We're
humanity.
living
I
under
laugh
a
at.
CR,
I laugh
so
at
no
his
matter what
craven corruption.
level was put forward
So
previously.
I am not
it
really
ended up
into
with a
attacking people's
continuing
personal.
resolution in
Just so
which,
you know, like I'm
we
not
do not see
here to attack.
any
I will
increases for
mock them
defense spending.
sometimes.
Similarly, there
But
are hot button
I
issues
don't,
that I think have
you know,
kept the appropriations process.
I have enough to
think
hate
of the
about some
wall.
of these people that I
Think
don't
of,
need,
ICE
petty
programming that
stuff
have
like
kept it, the appropriations
But just to let you
process,
know where I come
from working and
so
almost led to the
you don't.
brinksmanship at the end of the
I
fiscal
don't.
year.
I'm
We
not
certainly saw that
misunderstood.
in
What are you
the
talking
first
about?
term. And so our view
Brinksmanship? What's
is
that?
we can't afford, from the country's perspective, from a national security's
Why is it
perspective,
hiding
to
messages?
trust that the appropriations process will work as we all intend and hope that it would.
I know.
In that we have to use Republican votes.
He said there
to
was a
secure the
criminal
defense
process you
increases,
can go through.
the homeland increases, and even things like air traffic control and some other things.
Oh, you mean
So
crashing
from
planes?
the standpoint of what does the budget reflect, it's $1 trillion between both categories. Color of money is no different. And it will grow with inflation, which is not abnormal for the types
What's going on here?
Of assumptions put in a FIDIP. It is not the full FIDIP. We haven't gone through our national security strategy, our national defense strategy. That is work in progress.
What?
But what we have been very clear about, and I will continue to be clear,
Mhm.
is that when
They've
we
done
do
their
a
budgets,
fiscal,
bitch. What have you
year
been doing?
27
What have you been
budget,
working on?
we will make an allocation for discretionary that could fill the gap. It's,
But then
right
you
now
just
it's
talked.
in an account.
He just talked about not spending money. And now what he's saying is, well, but then if we need more money, we can go ahead and vote on getting more money. You know what? We need more money. And we need to do analysis on all the national security and the defense spending, but they've already submitted their budget. So didn't we do that analysis? I'm very confused. In my budget process history, my budget process means I met with my staff. We talked about what our priorities were. And then with the right group of people in terms of, making sure that information wasn't shared, personal information about salaries and other things, we had a smaller management group that helped work out how we would allocate money to salaries, et cetera, blah, 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 blah. Then I would present that to my board of trustees and we would argue back and forth. Well, first I would give it to my finance committee and we'd argue back and forth and they'd push back and we'd come up with a different, slightly revised budget. Then I would have to go to the full board of trustees and also have those same conversations, pushing back, pulling forward, etc. That's the way it was. And the board of trustees made the final decision on whether or not the budget was approved. I was the how, they were the what, right? They're the mission keepers, the board, and I am the how we achieve that mission as the management. I mean, there is a process for budgets, and this is lazy and specifically designed to undermine programming for humanitarian and other life-saving programs. It is racist and bigoted, and it is taking money away from supporting LGBTQ communities. I can see that I'm buffering, so I'll wait. Oh my gosh, I'm really buffering. Damn it. Come on. Okay. I think nope. I'll wait. I know. I'm buffering. I can see it in the replay. I just don't know where to begin. I just don't know where to begin. Okay. I think I'm back now. I'm shaking my head. Nope, I'm not back. Where am I? There I am. Okay, see, I'm so totally not cut up. Okay. I think I'm back.
That gives us the strategic decision to put it in a potential second reconciliation package or to do it through the discretionary process. But we believe it is vital that we get the $1 trillion in defense spending, that we get the border funding done, and that we don't put ourselves in a situation where we either are relying on a continuing resolution or in a situation where we have to accept a massive
I think
omnibus
it's my
bill
internet.
that contains things the administration doesn't support. We want the appropriations process to work. I actually think that this will lead to easier time bill by bill, where you've got some of the hot button issues out, but we'll see. But that is our intent, and I certainly thank you for the ability to explain where we've been on it.
Senator Reed.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Collins, and I want to also thank you for mentioning the importance of therapeutic foods for children across the globe. We have a production company, Adicia, in Rhode Island, and they have witnessed stop and go, funds cut off, supplies waiting in the air warehouse, rather, while children are starving. And that's not something to take pride in, Mr. Vogt. But that's been the result of your activities. I also want to make a point that my colleagues have made too. To get our appropriations through, you need 60 votes. You need a bipartisan coalition of people. And if we do that, we can't turn around and then on a partisan basis of 50 votes undercut it, because we have to maintain.
Yes, Teresa and Jay.
For our
That
own,
was Mitch.
I think
undermine the judiciary.
Integrity and continuity. We have to maintain what we put together in a difficult process, and I think that's a point that Senator Collins and Senator Murray have both made. And then what we see emerging, Mr. Vogt, frankly, is whatever we do will be, sort of suggestive, but not.
There you go. That's the heart of the issue. Come on. Keep it up, Reed.
You'll have rescission packages that come up here every other week, taking out everything you want and, allowing things that you don't want to survive. So I think it's the wrong approach, and I'll make that point up front. And let me ask a very brief, and I would hope for sharp responses from you. How much are you proposing to cut from the non-defense discretionary budget in FY 2026?
$163 billion, 20% reduction, the lowest level since fiscal year 17.
Don't be proud.
And how many federal workers will be eliminated because of those cuts?
You don't have a rack up for that.
Why not? Why wouldn't you? That would make sense. If you have a number, you have the people.
Figure out where we are throughout the fiscal year.
That's bullshit.
Well, I mean, published sources indicate over 100,000 people in non-defense agencies. Now, what's the budget request for OMB this year?
We have about a $120 million budget request. I think you're getting at that it's an increase, and we believe that's absolutely vital.
Why?
You look at us from the standpoint of the work that we do, the extent to which the debt continues to grow, the extent to which...
What do you have to do with that? You're not the fucking Treasury Secretary.
Putting forth recommendations and in charge of the deregulatory agenda. In the same way that
How are you in charge of the deregulatory agenda?
Coast Guard and try to plus up ICE agents. We also believe it's important to plus up those examiners.
So cutting to the chase, my numbers are 146 million.
I don't have it in front of me. This wasn't a
OMB
budget appropriations, but happy to get you our specific level.
Well, you should know your budget, you stupid
we
fuck.
have to cut all these programs, while at the same time we have to significantly increase the budget of OMB, adding 20 full-time employees while we cut hundreds of thousands in the rest of the government. And really, from what you've been saying today, this is not about budget analysis. You haven't produced any cost-benefit analysis.
That's another good point.
Talked about these programs.
Ideologically, these are ideological cuts.
Reduce AIDS. No, it's ideological. It's your preferences that you're imposing upon.
Gosh, I should be a fucking senator.
And the whole essence of Congress is we come together to represent the entire American population and work it out, argue a lot, but that's the process. And it's just ironic that you're building a backroom empire in OMB as you decry
Exactly.
that constantly in the public sphere.
Well, that sounds so good.
Now, let me, fine. Because time is low. You are running the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, correct?
I am, but I'd like
Oh,
to
boy.
respond to the last question.
No,
in the
you
sense
can't.
That we're
That's
talking
my
about 20
time.
career examiners, as if that is somehow going to break the bank. And in particular, in your area, Senator, we had one resource management organization that covers the entirety of the Department of Defense, the entirety of state and foreign aid, the entirety of the intel community, the entirety of the Department of Veterans Affairs. That type of resource management organization needs
well, then
more
you should know
career
your budget, and you
examiners
should be able to justify
continue
it.
to do the job
Next.
that it does. Look at General Accounting Office. I don't think they provide very much value add, to be honest with you. They are
Oh,
massive.
yeah, we know you
They
think
are
that.
absolutely massive. We don't want to have anywhere near that level of
Excuse me.
FTEs, but it's important.
I
for us
Take your
suspect
time
if
back.
I asked any one of your colleagues if they needed more people to do their job, they'd say the same thing. So it's not particularly compelling. But I want to get at a point, and excuse me. You are running the Consumer
I would
Financial
never just say,
Protection
I need more people
You
because
have
I need more
reduced
people.
the manpower in the Service Members Affairs Division, correct?
I am trying to. I am in
You are
judicial.
trying to. So you're putting more people in OMB, but you're taking away the people who are dedicated, in fact, the only place in the government, to protecting the finances of men and women in uniform in the United States, that everybody rolls the flag up and says they're great, they're great, they're great. But when they're taken advantage of by multiple companies, you've taken away the people that are going to fight for them.
Senator, that's actually not true. I specifically made military lending a priority in the enforcement guidance that I put out.
Really?
I am trying to reduce the overall footprint of the agency. I'm in judicial receivership where
But
I can't
no.
even cancel a contract,
Wait,
let
what?
alone do a reduction.
Wait, what? What did he just say? He's adding 20 people and millions of dollars to his annual budget, but he's making the footprint smaller? Are you kidding me right now? Like, what the fuck is this line? Why is this normal? Why is this normal? This should not be normal.
In force because I have to go and litigate this in district
Yeah, because
court.
you're
We are
doing
waiting
things
on
wrong.
that opinion. Hopefully that will be coming
Bitch.
soon to see how I might be able to answer your question specifically as to the number of employees that will result in
my
the enforcement division. But we ultimately believe that the Consumer Protection Bureau has not actually protected consumers.
That's
And I will tell you,
bullshit. Of course it has.
we-
Well, I don't
as
care what
we
your
delve,
feelings are.
delve deep, we have
I
found
do
the
not
extent to which
care
these
what your
examiners
feelings
have
are.
gone
Thank
out
you.
and tried to weaponize the agencies against hardworking Americans across the
Stop
country.
it. That's not
They're
true.
trying to protect soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and space guardians.
And we protect
and
that
you
enforcement.
don't care.
No, you
a bit
don't.
about them.
I don't
Thank
give
you.
a shit.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
No.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Vice Chairman, and certainly thank you for the witness that we have today. And I just
Let's see
want
what
to
Tina
commend
says,
the
but I'm probably gonna
administration's work
speed.
to rein in the federal spending, and I support the goals of putting this nation's fiscal house back
Do
in
you
order.
support,
So thank you for what you're doing.
a brush?
While mandatory spending is the biggest contributor to our annual budget deficits and the overall national debt, discretionary spending should not be exempt from scrutiny. And
It
we should
hasn't
always
been,
be
you stupid
examining
cow.
ways to reduce unnecessary expense to
using delays
Let me go
and
to
freezing.
All right, I like this guy.
program.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator Merkley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and welcome, Director Vogt. You mentioned that your pocket rescissions were misunderstood. Are you pledging us today that you will do not submit rescissions within 45 days of the end of the fiscal year?
I'm not making that commitment. I'm saying that no decision
Yeah.
has been made with regard to any additional rescissions package or the timing of those rescissions package.
Well,
Wow.
colleagues, I really want to emphasize that this strategy
This is
of
dangerous.
using delays and freezing.
Everyone should
and
be against this.
impoundments
Fucking
and
hell.
slow walking contracts.
Goddamn fucking
and
stupid
rescissions,
Republicans.
Partisan rescissions, pocket rescissions at the end of the fiscal year are all part of an unconstitutional plan to steal the power of the purse from Congress as stated in the Constitution and put it in the power of the President. Mr. Votes previously told me that he strongly believes that the Impoundment Control Act of
I
1974
can't use a
was
brush on my hair.
unconstitutional.
My hair is like this
That will get to the
naturally.
Supreme Court.
I don't brush my
But I
hair.
want to be clear, the U.S.
She
Supreme
brushes
Court
her
has
hair.
already ruled
So
twice
she
on
should
the question
commit to the brush.
of whether or not the power of the purse resides with Congress. And I
Remember
consider
when
this
she would watch a lynching on the
multifaceted
square?
strategy
Yes,
to be a
exactly.
huge attack on
That's
our
Tina Hyde-Smith.
Constitution. And I regret that you've undertaken it, as in you'd made a pledge to the Constitution, an oath to the Constitution, not to the President of the United States. I did find it concerning in your testimony that you note life-saving treatment, no life-saving treatment will be impacted by this package. Do you consider any life-saving treatment to have been halted by the January 25th 90-day freeze on AID?
We do not believe that life-saving treatment was halted through the various reviews.
How do you
Certainly
believe
not
that?
the direction of
How do you
policy
believe that?
officials.
How?
Throughout
Tell
the
us how.
first month, there was malicious compliance at times, and we worked through
Malicious
those as an
compliance? What the
administration.
fuck is that?
But that certainly was never intended to be halted.
Well, I
What?
consider that to be a huge deception.
Stupid
that
answer.
does not do justice to the truth. On January 25th, a 90-day freeze was announced halting PEPFAR. 60% of the PEPFAR staff was fired. Rubio announced that he was ending 5,200 of the 6,200 USAID programs.
Hello?
He then announced that 82% of USAID program was being shut down, and the remaining 18% would be transferred to the State Department. This resulted in a sudden collapse of malnutrition programs, tuberculosis programs, malaria programs, AID and HIV programs, and Boston University has put together a tracker of the impact of this sudden shutdown of these programs around the world. Let's review the child death count from the Boston University School of Public Health tracking of the impact of your shutdowns. 77,000 children have died up to today, their estimate, from pneumonia as a result of the shutdowns. 70,000 children have died from malnutrition. 59,000 have died from diarrhea. 33,000 have died from malaria. 7,000 infants have died from HIV, plus 118,000 adults. We are talking 250,000 children because of your irresponsible shutdown of programs that Congress had fully authorized and you unconstitutionally shut down in partnership with Elon Musk and the Secretary of State. How do you feel about being responsible for hundreds of thousands of children dying because of your sudden interruption in these key programs?
I reject the assertion. I'm happy to take a look at the tracker that you describe. Every administration has the ability to do a programmatic review when they come into office. In fact,
But you didn't,
that was
Blanche.
articulated
You didn't
earlier
do a
by
programmatic
one of your
review.
colleagues, to the extent to which
You
new
just froze
administrations come
funding.
in with new spending priorities. That's what we were doing. There was great malicious compliance with regard to the funding halt that you're referring
I find your
to.
response both ignorant and
And
callous.
offending,
And the interruption of
offensive.
these programs was carefully detailed by Secretary
Thank you,
Rubio.
Senator Merkley.
Elon Musk addressed them as well.
I'm going to
When I
clip
asked
that
Rubio
part clean
here
with what he says
in
and
the
how he
Senate
breaks it down.
about whether it was Elon Musk that drove these shutdowns, he said no. He had personally reviewed these contracts himself and his own statements about shutting down 5,200 of these programs. For you to come before this body and say that this vast shutdown of 82% of what USAID had no impact on human life just shows that you chose to make decisions totally out of sync with the Constitution. You were plenty welcome to put forward a budget for the next year. You were plenty welcome to veto any bill that we passed in the House and Senate. You could use your influence in all kinds of ways in the future, but you chose to shut down programs in the middle that have resulted in hundreds of thousands of children dying in the last few months. I find that abhorrent, and few Americans have ever had such a devastating and disasterly impact.
I would ask that members refrain from personal
go fuck yourself.
insults and stick to the
Stupid
issues.
ass.
Senator Britt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond. $18 million for improving gender.
I refuse to listen to any more of the Republican posturing on what program is worthy and what program is not, when they have no idea what program is what. So fuck them. I'm going to silence her. She's not going to be on. You can read what you want, but she is a fucking operative from the Christian fascist community infiltrating our government with her bullshit nonsense, wanting a pregnancy registry. This is the cunt that wants a pregnancy registry of women. She has a bill. She has a bill that she's co-authored to establish a national pregnancy registry so that she can keep track of us, all the pregnant women. I'm not going to be pregnant anymore, but so that she can keep track of all the pregnant people. That sounds like freedom, doesn't it? Doesn't that sound like freedom to you? It sounds like freedom to me. Well, it certainly sounds like freedom to her because she wants the freedom to control how many babies you spit out of your vagina. And she wants more white babies, more Christian white babies. That's her personal Jesus in this. You know, other people have other personal Jesuses in this, but her personal Jesus happens to be make sure you're white and pregnant. That's her personal Jesus. You know, somebody else, Tommy Tuberville, he's going to want bribery. That's his personal Jesus. His personal Jesus is money. So a lot of them have that personal Jesus. This guy does. This guy's all money. This guy's all money and control and a Christian nationalist in addition and a white supremacist, which is to Max's point where they did a control find in each of these grant programs, found the DEI, found whatever the keywords they were looking for to identify LGBTQ, diversity, inclusion, any of those terms. That's how they cut. They didn't evaluate every single one of those programs. Every single one of those programs has an evaluation model, has evaluation data that is historical that you can look at. So he knows that. They didn't look at any of the data and decide on programs based on, based on the evaluation of the program and whether or not it was doing what it intended to do. No. They cut it because of what it was intending to do. They cut it because of what it's intending to do, because it's intending to help black and brown people around the world. That's pretty much it, guys. It's eugenics in action. He's delighted that 250,000 people have died. 250,000 children, plus 118,000 adults. He's delighted with that number. He's going to get a special place on Mars from Elmo. Peter Thiel will applaud him. He'll be welcome at all the parties, finally. That's exactly right, Teresa. The trans community is a huge target of this administration. They are so hell-bent on destroying trans lives. You know, I really encourage people to watch The 13th, which is that documentary on Netflix that we watched last week about the 13th Amendment and what happened post 13th Amendment in the black community. Because you see, when you match that up with the, what's that movie we watched about the churches? God damn it. The Brett movie, the guy that I have a crush on, Brett. Oh my God, it's completely escaping me. Brent Allpress. Bad Faith. When you match the trajectory of Bad Faith, when you look at the 13th, those documentaries, when you start to start to see the kind of arc, and that different people within the administration have different bigotry and different goals in mind, right? They're not working as a monolith per se. But everything that they're doing, even individually, is working towards the larger goal of disrupting liberalism, disrupting diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is moving us towards a white, straight, valued society, which I understand that for those communities, that is always the way it feels. So this demagoguery is not new to many of the communities in this country, right? It's not, obviously, it's not new, and it's been in varying degrees. And now it's like on hyperdrive again. Teresa, I've been joking with my friends that I should get a number tattooed on my arm so I can pick out one I like. We've gotten yeah, I know gallows humor is very real, Meowing Star. I understand that, especially in communities that are being targeted actively by this administration. And I think that's the part that breaks my heart the most, is that when they came out and attacked DEI in the beginning, and trans rights, and gender affirming care and other things, and the ban on trans people in the military, which is still unfathomable to me. You know, when they do that, I feel like, and then it's just been this barrage of oh, sorry, this is Brian. We like Brian. Sorry.
Is trying to move to the State
All right,
Department.
thank you for listening to my speech.
That account funds a wide range of bipartisan priorities, and so I just kind of want to walk them with you, and you can tell me the extent of the cuts. So are you cutting funding for maternal and child health and Gavi or nutrition? And if so, by how much?
Again, Senator, this account was structured to give you a reflection of the unobligated balances in those main accounts. We will have substantial global health funding at the end.
How about, so the answer is
family planning, and it's PEPFAR.
Hold on, I don't want to
family planning and PEPFAR.
Yeah, I don't want to talk over each other. Okay.
Sure.
TB, malaria, polio. Is there a cut there, and if so, how much?
Again, those have been
I used to think about
priorities
doing
that we have had, as you've seen in our budget. But again,
Director, it's fine if you want to say you're not going to tell me, but we don't have to launch into our talking points. I'm just trying to get a number, and it's pretty customary in front of the Appropriations Committee with the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, who is proposing to rescind dollars, for me to say, are you going to cut this? And if so, by how much? And I don't think it's actually a sufficient answer to say we see unobligated balances and we'll either get back to you or not. So what about family planning? Are you cutting that?
yes.
How much?
$500 million.
Okay. Pandemic prevention?
Again, there are two
No, he's
accounts
just asking for a
global
number.
Health. $500 million for family planning and $400 million for PEPFAR. The extent to which you want us to be specific is not a test and a standard in which you hold yourselves up to with regard to appropriations bills. You don't ask
No,
us to
I
say,
rethought it.
we don't ask the Congress to say we want a rack-up of every grant and recipient in every specific line item and program. We work with the allocations that you give us, and there's obviously back and forth.
No,
as it
there shouldn't
pertains to
be.
the interactions between the
But there shouldn't be.
executive branch.
Yeah,
We've given
I
you
got
the
it.
extent
I
to
got
which
it.
Yeah, but
the
there's not.
formal,
You're just
the
making
top-line
cuts.
accounts are impacted.
And you're not even
And the
telling
main
us what you're going to cut
story is
Sir, we're limited on
specifically.
time.
Unobligated balances are flush.
Yeah,
Can we
reclaim
please
the
take
time.
notes?
Stop it.
Thank you.
Don't let him.
You're proposing to rescind $1.3 billion in addition to $1.5 billion in emergency funds that you said you won't spend for humanitarian assistance. The big chunks of this are Sudan, Syria, Ukraine, and DRC. And those are roughly equal amounts that we're currently spending. Are you planning on distributing the reductions equally among those four baskets? Do you have an idea of which of these humanitarian crises are going to get less funding? Or do you consider that your prerogative to decide after we enact this rescissions package?
Again, we are looking at the flexibilities that you've given us within
Can I
appropriation.
just,
Whoa.
do you think it's your prerogative to decide which of these to defund, or do you think it's the legislature's prerogative?
You all write appropriations bills. You have allocations that are set in those appropriations bills. We take an assessment as to what is there in terms of
Nope.
unobligated balances.
Nope.
And we
No,
make
you
a
don't.
decision as to what is necessary.
What
But
do you
the
mean,
notion,
you
unless
make a
you've written
decision?
into the law,
Who made you a
in
king?
terms of your statutory expectations, there is great flexibility there. And
No, there
much
isn't.
of, I think, quite frankly, the fake
No, there
news
isn't.
this year has been the extent to which we are pursuing our flexibilities into the law to make sure that funding is aligned with our priorities.
Let me try it this way, Director. It's plainly true that you're exercising your authorities to the maximum extent of the law, and then we can have an argument about whether or not you're exceeding your statutory and constitutional authorities. But it's certainly within the prerogative of the legislative branch when considering a rescissions package to say, this thing isn't specific enough for me to vote yes. This is actually our call now. And if you're not going to give us any specificity and say, look, we've got the authority to ignore you, that's actually true. And then we've got the authority to reject this package. Thank you.
Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Vogt, welcome. Thank you. What I want to know and what I'd like to talk about a little bit is first of all, I've got two specifics. And then
Yeah,
once
his
I'm done with
flexibility
those,
is
I wanna
breaking the
talk a little
law.
about
There's
what the
no,
philosophy should be for
this is not,
committee
I want to
moving
read that
forward
Empowerment Control
so that
Act.
we can have this actually work and we don't end up in another continuing resolution. We actually get an agreement here and members of this committee feel as though their concerns will be met next year. So first of all, we have Native American radio stations in South Dakota. They get their funding through NPR. 90-some% of
Did
what
the leopards
they
eat my
use,
face?
They will not continue to exist.
What?
If we don't
The
find a
leopards
way
ate
to
my
take
own
care of their
face?
needs.
What
It's
the
not a large
fuck?
amount of money. But would you be willing to work with us to try to find a way for these places where
Wow.
literally they're not political in nature?
Wow.
These are the folks that put out
Apparently
the
they are,
emergency
sir. Did you not know?
notifications. They talk about community events.
Did
and
you
so
not
forth, but they're in
know?
very,
Oh,
very
well,
rural areas where
so
there
does
simply
everybody,
isn't
you
any
stupid
economy
cuck.
to support buying advertising on these stations. Would you work with us to try to find a way?
He's eating
in
my
those states that have
face?
got these types of
Wait,
radio stations to
You're eating my face?
Yes, Senator. I think it's an important
Sure, meet
aspect
with me.
of this.
Yeah.
Our view is that
Kiss my ass.
we've structured this rescission, particularly with Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It's advance appropriation. It's not this current funding, but also to preserve other funds in other agencies that could help with this particular need.
Oh, because there's extra money in other agencies? Excuse me?
I want to meet with you and let's find a way to make sure these folks.
Senator, you're a fucking
Second of all,
asshole.
on PEPFAR, I do think, as Senator McConnell indicated, soft power is very, very important. I'd much rather find a way to work with a number of our countries throughout Africa in particular that really do want to work with us rather than going directly to China.
People on the ground
other,
wanted the programs that were
entities that are
being
out there
funded by
looking.
USAID. They were the ones driving
I'm not
that.
sure that I'm satisfied that we've done a good job yet of confirming that that money's going to be there. Would you be willing to sit down with a group of us who want to find a way to make sure that that PEPFAR funding is there and that it is being directed
So if
through
we kiss your
appropriate
ass,
channels
can we
to
like get
to
an
where it's truly
exception to the face
Absolutely.
eating?
We're definitely want to make sure that we open up the executive branch to be able
What?
to make sure
To
it's
do
not
what?
halted. If there's a belief that something is halted, to
What?
show you what we mean by life-saving treatment and also
Oh
what we
my
mean and
God,
don't
what
mean by
you mean?
preventative
Who are
care.
you? Who are
Because,
you?
You know, this is, I think, one of the
Oh my
instances of
God.
generosity on behalf of the American people. $120 billion now since the
I'm just gonna
program's
have to be
inception,
quiet from now
and I
on,
think
so
they
enjoy
deserve
the
to know
show.
It's actually going to life-saving care and not these NGOs.
Well, and as you know, I do disagree with a few of the provisions that are in the proposal, but that's a part of the process. And you have done this legally, but I really do want this appropriations process to get back on track. I'd really like you to be able to share with our members on both sides here that what your belief is, that there's a recognition that it does take 60 votes to get out of the Senate, that there are going to be some issues in there that we're going to have some disagreements on, but it's better to have an appropriations process that actually works its way across rather than continuing the continuing resolutions that we're suffering with right now.
Absolutely no disagreement with that, Senator. And, you know, the fact that the President signed many bills that he wasn't wild about in the first term, specifically because that was the process. We are trying to learn from history and figure out what we can do on the mandatory side to make it not so much on this committee to solve every problem because it's a must-pass bill. And honestly, I think as an authorizer, I think you understand that. But you know, this committee shouldn't have to carry every bill that Congress does.
Well, and I'm running out of time, but I just want to confirm one item, and that is if something is clearly authorized and it is appropriated and it may have to be more specifically appropriated than what it has been in the past. But if that occurs, you recognize the need to get the project done. And if you can save some money, that is better yet.
Do you think
But
that's part of the
you
grant
will
seeking
follow the
process and
law
the
and
grant
make sure
making
that those
process, Senator? Do
programs
you not
are-
think that that's what goes on in the grant
I think I
making
can agree with that,
process?
Senator, in terms of how you frame the question. I mean, our view of being able to spend less than appropriation is based on efficiency, and also where the Congress or the President has clear constitutional
Jim,
duties.
I'm
foreign
begging you
affairs, and
to
other things
not
like
make-
that. But if you all give us a task and you think it costs $100 million, and we have the ability
Please.
to do it for
I
80.
can't handle it today.
For 200 years, presidents had the ability to spend a little bit less. And since, I believe, the 1970s, we've just pushed things out the door, and it has led to where we are. And I think I can say that we agree on that matter.
Well,
The end of
I think the
liberalism.
chairwoman for her forbearance here, and I thank you for that, and I think that's part on us as well. So $36 trillion in debt, we got to do something to rein this in.
No,
Thank
you don't.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You fucking idiot. You
Senator
should tax the
Baldwin.
rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to associate myself with the comments just made by my colleague, Senator Daines. I'm, in fact, going to start at the same place you started in your questioning. The rescission package before us today would hurt communities that all of us have the privilege of representing. There are 120 rural public media stations that receive at least 25% of their revenue from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Members of this committee represent nearly 2/3 of these stations, including WOJB, serving northwestern Wisconsin and beyond from the Lucoutere Reservation in Hayward, Wisconsin. My question for you, did you analyze the impact of this rescission proposal on local public radio and television stations, yes or no?
We always analyze everything, and we took.
Really? What's the analysis? Can we see
My office in
it?
this committee with a copy of that analysis.
I'm happy to answer any questions for the record that
No,
you might have.
we would like to see a copy
I'd like
of your
to see
analysis.
a copy of your analysis. That's what I'm asking.
We conduct analysis all over the place. As it
Then you should
pertains
write
to
a
the questions
report.
that you might have for the record. I'm
Do you
happy
not know how to
respond
do
them.
analysis?
Very good. Congress spends months negotiating appropriations bills so that they can and almost always do garner overwhelming bipartisan support. I was so proud on this committee to see our committee send most of our subcommittee bills out with near unanimous endorsement. And so the committee comes together in a bipartisan manner to invest in our nation's most valuable asset, our people.
Babe, that ship sailed, okay?
We
Stop
put
it.
the people we
There's no
represent
norms.
ahead of partisan politics and invest in our nation's economic development, public health, and national security. Passing partisan rescission packages to undo bipartisan appropriation bills will fundamentally change the work of this committee and Congress. We write these bills to invest in programs that we, the elected representatives of our state, know are important for our communities. Like any bipartisan agreement, there's always things that I don't like and things in it that my Republican colleagues don't like. But regardless of who is in the majority, we can't
And yet they think that
negotiate
programs are not
bipartisan
worthwhile,
deals
but
if the
they're
majority
really
walks
closely
back
evaluated
those
on like
agreements
science-based
months
models.
later.
Okay.
That is precisely why rescission proposals like this haven't been enacted in recent history. If there are changes to be made to appropriated funding, the levels of funding or what it is spent on, those should be made through the appropriation process. That is why this committee exists. So, Director Vogt, you have said that OMB could send up multiple rescissions packages or just outright impound funds. Right now, the Department of Labor is not committed to spending fiscal year 2024 funding for congressionally directed spending projects as a June 30th deadline quickly approaches. Would congressionally directed spending projects be eligible for a rescission proposal under the Impoundment Control Act?
Senator, thanks for the question. We are aware of those funds. We are not there yet, and they have a unique fiscal year, the end of June.
Yes.
We are under a programmatic review. We still have time to obligate those funds.
Really?
129.
We are looking very carefully at those programs to make sure that they are consistent with the president's
These
priorities.
are congressionally directed spending requests
Wow.
from members of this committee on
Wow.
a bipartisan basis that this committee approved. That money needs to be
We're certainly aware
allocated.
of the funding at issue.
So right now, the Department of Education
We're going to do
is
it.
not
He's just
committed
telling
to
Tammy to
spending
fuck herself.
appropriated funding for formula grant programs that should be allocated to states and school districts in the coming days. That is leaving schools.
Our country is
completely
under
in the dark
siege,
about how
Badger.
much
I don't know what
funding they
else to
will
tell
have
you.
for the
I
school
really
year that
don't.
starts in
And it's going to get
2
worse.
months.
And people can laugh at me
With
now,
funding for the
but you're
Department
not
of
going to be
Education
laughing in
formula
6
grants
months
for
when this
before
is
and
all
after-school
fucked.
programs or funding
And we have
directly
massive
support teachers
unemployment and
educators
whatever else
be
comes along with
eligible
that.
for the next rescission
Jesus.
proposal.
I'm sick of this.
We are considering multi-year funding, and it is underway with a programmatic review. But again, it is multi-year funding, and no decision has been made with regard to whether they will be a part of any particular rescissions package. We are aware of the extent to which we are reviewing those funds.
Madam Chair, I have more questions, but I note that my time has expired. I will submit them for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Kennedy.
I'm not sure I can listen to him.
Director, I want to apologize.
But you know what? I'm numb and I just can't. So let's go ahead and listen to him.
But I can assure you that under congressional rules and the laws in the District of Columbia, they will be promptly punished and put on double secret probation. You'll probably see them back again today. I think the president's demonstrated that he understands that what you allow is what will continue. We seem to have a problem with that concept. I listen to some of my colleagues accuse you of doing everything but abandoning your children to wolves. They accuse you of undermining the sanctity and integrity of the appropriations process. And I'm sitting here thinking, what sanctity?
Oh, you don't believe in the sanctity of it? Okay, good for you to be on the record on that.
Process. I'm proud to serve on this committee. I watched this committee last year. We passed 11 out of 12 minibuses. Sent them to, and we all choked down some stuff you wouldn't believe. And we sent them to Senator Schumer, my friend. He refused to bring the bills to the floor of the Senate. Now, that's when he was in the majority. You really think he's going to allow us to vote on a budget?
Unfortunately, we're live. I can't even skip him.
And his politics. If you do, you're Willie Nelson high.
You know what I can do, though? I can play you another
God
video.
ever put
Hold
breath
on.
in.
Hold on.
What appropriations process? All we've got left are CRs and rescission packages. And President Trump's not the first president to ever send a rescission package, is he?
No, sir.
A bunch of presidents have, haven't they? And did civilization melt?
They did not.
No, they didn't.
Okay, what we're going to do is watch the newest video that I just created because I like to, promote the work. Got to promote the work. So if you haven't seen the latest video I made, well, here it's going to come at you because we're not going to listen to him because I can't. And it's my show. So there you go. It's my show. Okay, here it is. Yeah. Bye.
The ability for them to hide any transaction they want, go around sanctions and in any way they want without any government interference, but at the same time feeding every bit of information from the government into Doge and Palantir and all their own back-end systems. Basically what they're doing in a covert way is making the government totally irrelevant, right? They're making financial system irrelevant, and
This is
making
actually relevant to what
AI,
we're watching.
the government irrelevant to AI, all of these different things
Jim is
because
right.
they want to, effectively starve it of meaning.
So that they can create network states? I don't know. Did I go too far on that
No,
idea?
no, you're completely right. And by the way, I'm sorry to, maybe they'll be amazing, but all that land, that federal land, the beautiful, gorgeous places that they're planning to sell to billionaires and whoever. Guess what they're going to put there? Guess what they're going to put there? They're going to make big network states where they can fucking have whatever their feudalist weird ass fucking white
Meowing
supremacist.
Star, you're right.
I mean, have you seen some of these guys?
They're
Like
so
the
brave.
Praxis Nation. Gal showed me this one video. I've been tracking for a while, but it's just Nazi shit. They're like, we're building a Nazi place in the middle of California.
Welcome
And
to our Nazi compound.
it's
Only
crazy.
cool dudes and dudettes should apply. My name is Vinny Inagarilla, and I'm running Frontier Valley, here in the beautiful Alameda, California, where there used to be a naval air station. Well, get this irony. I'm about to screw this motherfucker right up the old naval air flagpole, and I'm gonna put a big old network state right here in the middle of the beautiful but woke Bay Area. It'll be woke no more. We're gonna put you all to sleep. That's right. Get your part of the network state today. Come down. I'm Vinny Inagarula, or whatever my name is, and I'm here to tell you that Frontier Village is the valley of your future. Thank you. That's my ad. I just made that up.
I thought you were someone else. I was like, who the hell is
Shit,
this?
man. Good Lord.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll accept my BAFTA now. Thank
Yeah,
you.
what's the Emmy for
I wish I
spaces?
was actually not modeling that on a real thing, but I am. It's real.
I feel like we should give you an Emmy. There's got to be an award for spaces.
Is there a Webby? Is there a Spacey?
Spacey.
Well, the only thing that would have made it
Spacey
better
is a little,
would be the
that has
vibrator.
some kind of.
If you miss the beginning of the space, the vibrator
this
talk
show
comes
should
in. So
definitely
just
be the
you have to
submission,
do that.
let me
Yeah,
just
you have to watch the whole show. It's on my X account.
Vinny and Nagarula. Don't look it up either. Don't Google Frontier Valley. Don't fucking do
that a
it.
thing?
Okay? Thank you.
Okay.
It's
I'm
a real
worried about
thing.
Nagarula. That's the one I'm worried about looking up.
It's something like that. There's a lot of I's, there's a lot of L's, there's a lot of letters in his name, and I just can't remember it off the top of my head.
So maybe that would get us through. And Jay, I got to play your song. Yeah, girl. You're too generous. But here you go. We're going to turn it down a little bit because I don't want to kill your ears. I just love this song. Final Combat. Just makes me want to dance. We're soon going to have Lolo Cella, by the way. Oh, no, I'm going to play your song. Okay, don't, please. We needed it. But here's the thing. There's going to be a Lolo Cella coming up where it's like a legitimate DJ show. I'm not kidding. I'm going to have the whole thing. I'm going to DJ one night, and we're going to do music, and we're going to dance. So watch out for Lolo Cella, because it's coming to a Discord near you. All right, I'm sorry. Let's see if What's-His-Fuck is doing anything. Or if we've moved on. Have we moved on? Great Jesus, have we moved on? Peters, do we like him? I don't even know. Do we like you? I don't think we like. Oh no, we don't like you, so we must like him.
You know, what happens when we have a president who decides that Air Force base in Missouri shouldn't get the funding we appropriated for it, or the Army
Thank
base
you for
in
the break.
Arkansas, or the highway in Alabama, or the National Park Unit in Alaska. And so we just have to think through this and make sure that we're still
G.
relevant
Oh my
here.
God, what a cute handle you have. Hi,
address,
G. I'm going to DJ. No, I'm not really. I'm a
because
I'm a bad DJ, but we're gonna dance. We're gonna have a dance party on
the
Discord.
chair held up this
I have all the mixes ready. I'm ready,
That's
and the
something we've
lights.
actually been able to
All of the lights.
on a very bipartisan basis. Director, how familiar are you with our UTF, what it's used for?
I'm
He's not.
familiar,
He's
be able to
familiar that he cut
come
the
here
bitch.
knowing it would be addressed.
It's something you use when kids are so severely malnourished that they need to eat this before they can eat other food. They can't eat rice.
Here we
They
go. I
can't
know it'll be
eat
fun.
normal food.
I
And
got
so
a lot
when
of
I
good stuff
hear
lined
that
up.
none of
I
the
got
life-saving
theme
stuff
nights.
has changed,
I got it all.
I'm trying to square the
Ready to
fact
fail.
that I and a number of other colleagues were at a refugee camp in northwest Kenya where the funding got cut off. It got cut off for rice. It got cut off for this kind of stuff. And now mothers are on a 600.
Are you watching the Bondi thing? We watched her yesterday, and I don't know how much bondage I can
That's
take.
slow starvation.
I'm gonna be honest.
So if that's not what this administration
I seem to have a very
needs
short
to
fuse
do,
today,
then you need to get together with Secretary Rubio and fix it.
and I'm going out
Because
this
I
afternoon
saw
to take
kids
care of
that,
me.
You know, when they get
but
malaria, when they get dysentery,
I clearly need that.
they can't
I need
eat
to get
food
out of my house.
anymore. And if we're not doing this, and notice
I
it
know
has
you have a
American
busy
flag
day.
on
I'm
it, that is
sorry.
smart, soft power. Because we have
Oh, she was worse today.
allies like Kenya, who are the last bastion of defense
Yay!
against
We're going to the grocery store with Karen.
lawless, terrorism that occurs further north.
I'd like a
I mean,
baguette.
that's why there's a refugee camp there. It's because of the South Sudanese war. Not to mention the
Oh,
terrorism
that we're flying people too
tries to
that never
move into
even
Central
aren't even from Africa.
East. It is a smart investment so that we don't have to send troops.
Yeah.
And we are not meeting that obligation right now. And that has life and death consequences. So it's one thing to talk about somebody's report. It's another to have to look at mothers and kids who are slowly starving.
He didn't read a report even.
Director, you impounded USAID funds to Colombia.
No, sir, we did not.
You did not?
We have
what
not
happened?
impounded any funding.
Oh, really? Not sending it? Isn't that impounding?
I'll get back to that. If I misspoke, then otherwise I'll
No,
just
no, no, no. Don't. Make him press him. Come on. Make him tell you what he did.
once again to this.
Is he holding any funding?
Of
I don't know where he's from.
broadcasting,
Hold on.
because there are a number of places.
I really don't know. I'm sure
where,
somebody does.
There is no
Let me see.
CNN. There is no Fox. There's no nothing for emergency broadcasting except for public broadcasting.
Hello.
Alaska has the most stations that
Hello.
that receive over 25%.
Gee, why are you on a
funding from NPR?
alt? Is there
But
something?
New Mexico is
Because
the
you shouldn't be blocked
What do you
under
say
any of
to
your
communities like
handles.
Zuni, New Mexico, or
But if
Reagan,
if
New
I need to
Mexico,
look, let me know.
tribal communities that
Can you
that
put
simply
Pam
don't
Barbie's head
have
on a Barbie
any
doll?
other
Hell yeah, I
form
can.
of emergency broadcast
yeah.
backup,
Let me
where you're
let me
not
do it for you.
replacing, you know, the
Let me find a
for-profit
real
radio station down
skanky
the street.
Barbie doll.
You're just telling people that when there's a wildfire, you're not going to have
Oh, this is a
emergency
good one though.
information.
Oh, I
And how
kind of
did you
like
rack
these.
and stack that
Thanks for the
approach?
question. Those important stations would not go away. I heard the number 25%
What?
from the senator from Wisconsin. Our number is about 17% in terms of the
What?
revenues that they rely on CBP for. There is ample time for them to adjust, but even the funds that they receive, they then send back to Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or specifically NPR and PBS for programming. So our view is that they should be more judicious with where they are paying for content, and that is no longer a need. Similarly, we protect other government programs in which important information, emergency information, weather, is getting put out to the public via these stations. So our view is that we specifically did not rescind fiscal year 25 funding. This is about 26 and 27 advanced appropriations. We have not created a cliff. We have given an opportunity to work through these things and allow them to plan accordingly so that they can continue to serve the communities that you represent and that they serve.
Chair Collins, I hope we'll take extra time to make sure that those committees have what they need, communities have what they need.
Let's do it. Sure.
I would note to my colleagues that a vote has begun. I'm going to call on Senator Haggerty is next, and I am going to try to race over and vote.
Well, don't break a hip.
I ask unanimous consent that statements from the George W. Bush Institute and Bill Gates be put into the record without objection.
Wait,
Thank
what?
you. Director Vogt, welcome.
Thank you.
As we've heard today, rescissions are a long-standing feature of the appropriations process, and that this committee routinely includes rescissions in its annual funding bills, correct?
Yes, Senator.
For example, the most recent appropriations bill enacted by this committee included 162 rescissions totaling over $60 billion in previously appropriated funding. That's over 6 times the amount proposed.
Do I have a Pam Bondi head?
To be clear, the rescissions request we're debating today is straightforward. It's simple. And the examples that you provided underscore a gross misuse of taxpayer funding.
Oh, gross? Gross according to whom, sir?
It's one that's crucial to America's long-term competitiveness, in my view. If we want our nation to remain a global hub for innovation and for economic growth, we must ensure that our research institutions have the ability to compete on the international stage. And that starts with examining how we fund these research institutions. It's important to recognize that life-saving biomedical research can, if properly managed, be a key driver of our nation's strategic advantage in science and technology. I'm fully supportive, as I know this administration is, in ensuring that every dollar entrusted to us by the taxpayer is
Hold on, we're doing something really important, sir.
when it comes to research.
You don't
on these
understand.
activities. We must ensure that these valuable funds are focused on advancing scientific research and not wasted on administrative expenses. One particular area that has received considerable attention is the use of grant funding for so-called indirect costs and overhead. I'm a businessman.
I'm a businessman.
I've seen all kinds of costs
I'm a
classified as, quote,
businessman.
indirect cost. However, when we take a closer look at what is being defined as indirect cost,
Where's Pam Bondi's
in
head?
this circumstance, it can often include expenses like personnel, like hazardous waste disposal, secure data storage. In many cases, these costs aren't unrelated luxuries. They may well be essential to our ability to conduct safe and high-quality research, research that gives America a competitive advantage against the world. So, Director Vogt, my question is this. As the administration looks at ways to make sure taxpayer funds are efficiently and effectively used on research and not on bloated overhead, do you believe there's room to work with Congress, and with this committee in particular, to make sure we get it right when it comes to accounting for activities that are mission critical to research and those that are truly wasteful or overly bureaucratic, in a way that provides transparency to the public, to the Congress, and to OMB, and to do so without stifling American innovation?
Absolutely, Senator, and I appreciate the question. I know this is a priority for both you and the chair. Much of my time right now is being spent with university presidents, chancellors of systems, to get a handle on the extent to which, and quite frankly, they have come forward and said, look, we know there's an issue. We can't continue to receive 40 to 50% for indirect cost rates when Bill Gates pays out 10% from the Gates Foundation. So we are working through
what does this mean? What does any of this mean? Oh, this is not working. Okay. Don't say.
And you.
Thank you, Director Vogt.
Somehow this is
had
not
a number of
going very
those
well.
conversations. I doubt as many as you have. But in those conversations, what I've also found is that the federal government imposes certain requirements on research institutions, reporting requirements, compliance requirements that they can't even explain, nor do they understand the logic behind them. Many of them are redundant, overlapping, or just a royal pain in the you-know-what.
Oh, yeah.
So I applaud any effort that we might also undertake to try to streamline those costs, to try to make this as efficient and effective as we possibly can. So I'm a firm believer that the federal government can learn a great deal from the private sector when it comes to efficiency, when it comes to return on investment, and streamlining is one of those opportunities as well. And I still believe that there are inefficiencies in our research enterprises, don't get me wrong. But I also believe that we must have accurate and transparent accounting so that we can appropriately balance our shared goals of physical discipline and life-saving research. Thank you very much, Director Vogt.
Thank you.
I think it's me. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I'll just be honest with you. I understand the rescission process and what we're trying to do, and you gave some examples of
so big.
You know, like the $20 million for Sesame Street in Iraq and all that bad stuff. As I understand it, that's not really what we're talking about. The things that you read about PEPFAR spending, could you go over that some of the crazy stuff?
Sure. $333,000 for LGBTQ advocacy in Uganda, $530,000 for Lesbian Justice Foundation, $9.3 million to advise Russian doctors on how to perform abortions and gender analysis.
And that was under that used.
Apparently, my technology is not going to help today, so I'm so sorry. But I will soon have Barbie with fucking Pam Bondi's head. Life is not helping me today, so that's fine. No problem. It's usual.
As hard as I know how to support it, in good faith, believing that preventing mother-to-child AIDS transmission is not only good human policy, it's good national security. It's the right thing to do. It's good soft power. And now I have to listen to this. And to those like Samantha Power, you're the one that got rid of USAID. And the people who are running PEPFAR, to let that amount of money, I mean, that's millions of dollars, right?
Yes, sir.
To go to that junk. We have common ground.
What is happening right now? Yeah, I can't watch him either. I really don't like making any kind of gay jokes about him because I don't give a shit who he fucks. I really don't. I have enough problem with him as a human being that I don't give a shit who he fucks or what he's doing with his life. That is like the last thing I give a shit about. Okay, I'm going to head out to my appointment and maybe take a very long walk. There's some really good information on the pinned message about rescission and where we are. And then we read a story this morning about vote and the way that they're really using whatever loopholes are in the laws in order to hold back the money. The bottom line is people are dying. And I think I want to clip that one part where he goes into what is actually people who are dying. Merkley's part. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not judging. I'm just telling you that's my personal feeling is why I don't make jokes about him being in the closet because I don't really give a shit if he's in the closet. Actually, I feel like he would be much happier if he's doing what he's done. Anyway, I don't care. I don't care what their sexual preferences are. I care how they're hurting people. That's what I care about. But I understand. I understand what you're saying. But yeah, it's just not something I get into. Anyway, well, it's been a day. I'm going to go outside. I hope you're able to do the same. I know you probably can't in some situations, so I hope you can. Let's see. Tonight is Wednesday. Today's Wednesday. Okay, so I will be doing a wake and bake tomorrow because we have more fun. And there's so many things that I really wanted to get to today that we might go ahead and try and get some stuff in tomorrow. Bye, G. Thank you so much for stopping in. I appreciate it during a busy work day. But we will be live tomorrow morning, and there's going to be a lot because I want to go over even some of the Pam Bondi stuff and all this kind of crap. I want to kind of keep up with some of the headlines, and I know there'll be new stuff. And I know we have a postal service, I think, hearing tomorrow. Maybe that was today, but anyway, we'll figure it out. I will. I'll just take a little walk. I think it's a good idea to clear my head. And so, yeah, take care of yourself. I'm sorry. This was a lot to take in. I mean, we just deal with some heavy stuff. So, thanks for hanging in there with me. I really appreciate it. I so appreciate it. And I hope the rest of your day goes really well. All right. Okay. See you on the Discord. See you in the funny papers. And let's